яку покинув так давно. Цілую, ставши на коліно, своє полкове знамено. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє у нез'ясованій журбі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
1 second, everyone. It looks like, let me make sure to pick the right one. The scene has been messed up. 1 second, everyone. Let me try and see about getting this fixed. So, give me just a moment here. And...
Raggy.
So, wait, let me check that real quick. And let me go back. Okay, now it is working. Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to day 394 of the news. We're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the war in Ukraine. Things are still falling apart behind the scenes due to the internet outages because OBS decided to self-update, so it appears that all of my key bindings now do not work. But I'm, of course, accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 395, and we are back.
And I gotta say, it is great to be back. It's absolutely wonderful to know that the key bindings are hardly working. And on top of that, speaking of key bindings, the Ukrainians have been binding...
Yeah, I can hear you somewhat.
Alright, and OBS just reconnected. Alright, everyone. It looks like we're dealing with the same problems we were having for the past 4 nights. We have done just about everything we can at this point, so we are going to try and press on through this insanity while it flatlines itself again on my screen, and we'll just see if it hangs on. We'll treat this like the Russian army. Will it hang on or will it not by the end of this day? Tune in and find out, because it looks like the internet is already crapping itself. But anyways, moving on from that, we have some interesting news today. And starting off with probably one of the more interesting bits from yesterday, we saw that in Germany, there was still more training going on. If only our internet could be this good as all the training happening in this German training ground. And now the video's taking a good hour to load. And now we can hear some sick music. I don't even know if y'all will be able to hear this or not. But you can see right here all the vehicles in training, the Humvees, the Bradleys. Oh my. And now the video's loading. That tells me good things are happening with OBS. Some absolute juice. Call this Hennessy because it'd be slurred and not really coherent. But you can see right here that the Humvees are being loaded up with infantry kit. And it appears that the Ukrainians are training on a wide variety of vehicles here. And from what we understand, this may actually be Vilseck, but we can't really confirm that. The Russians have apparently been taking the training wheels off of their armed forces as our stream flatlines again. And it is. Oh man, I've got to tell you, I don't really know what we're going to do, Matthew.
Well, is it still flatlining or are we back?
We're back, but if it's going to flatline like that every 2 minutes, how are we ever even going to cover the news at all?
I say let's keep going, and if it keeps doing it too many times, we'll see if there's a solution to it.
Well, that's if we can ever find a way to do that. So, you know what? Matthew, we're about to pull a JV up in here. We're about to go and blow up the whole place. But anyways, we're going to be moving on up into Belarus and Minsk, while YouTube's now telling me there's also not enough streaming data coming through, where we can see that the training wheels have been taken off of the Russian army, and they are apparently having to be trained in Belarus now. This is quite a shock, considering that the Belarusian armed forces are considered to be at a far lesser level in training and expertise than even the Russians are. And of course, we know the Russians are about the bottom of the barrel. But according to the Ministry of Defense of the United Kingdom, the Russians are now sending a decent amount of their troops that will be going into Ukraine into Belarus to be trained by the Belarusian army. This shows that apparently the cadre of the Russian training units has been practically wiped out for all intents and purposes, and they really have no one left to even train the new and incoming soldiers, which gives you an idea of how bad their armed forces are off. Just like our internet is off very badly, the Russian armed forces are also hardly hanging on by a thread. We're now going to be moving on from Belarus and on into the rest of the wide world to make sure that we don't have any international news to cover. And now that we do not have any international news to cover, we're going to be going back into Ukraine, and this time into the sweet, beautiful city of Sevastopol, which is better off than our internet connection. Once again, I've got to say, let me check on that again, and it looks like it's okay right now. But moving on into Sevastopol, we actually got some news that the Russians are packing up. They're literally selling and leaving Crimea. Now, this is something fairly interesting because this is a incident that has started to occur over the past few days, just about the past 3 days or so. And also, this was reported by none other than the Enforcer Twitter page. Hey, turn up! What better place to get your news from than the Enforcer's Twitter page? Because Enforcer Twitter page is not inflicted at all by internet connectivity issues. Can we get a yee-haw for that, Matthew? That's right. Let's get one more time. A little less energy on that one, but hey, that's fine. Anyways, Russian authorities are selling their properties and they're moving on out of the country. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that they're probably seeing that Crimea won't be Russian for much longer, and it'd be better to sell to another poor sucker than it would be to stay there and eventually lose the property or get it blown away in the middle of battles occurring on the peninsula. So, absolutely great to hear. It's also great to know that the internet's staying up long enough for me to do this plug. Matthew, are you the one committing the DDoS attacks to get people over to the Twitter?
Yeah.
Just taking another sip of that nasty juice. Make sure to join the Twitter, by the way. We just got 4,200 followers, which is absolutely fantastic, Matthew, because I think we finally reached the number we were looking for.
Yeah, I think so.
That's absolutely great. You know, when we went to the supermarket, or as some call it, like in Spanish, the supermercado the other day, we were wondering if we would ever get to this number, and it looks like we have. So, good job, everyone. Thank you for joining the Lee Spring Army on Twitter. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from Crimea and on up into, you guessed it, the border region. The border region, of course, is somewhat quiet most of the time, but every once in a while, it borders, see what I did right there, it borders on the point of activity. And over the past 48 hours, we have seen some activity occur. For example, we saw that the Russians are starting to cut more of their gas flow into Europe through the Gazprom pipelines that pass through Ukraine. They've apparently cut it in between, let's see, let me make sure. Let's see, recorded on March 24th. So apparently over just the past day, Gazprom has reduced the gas flow by a whopping 15%. That's actually pretty significant, but at the same time, from what we understand it, most European governments and nations have declared that they are no longer dependent on Russian gas or even purchase Russian gas at all, and so this may be the pipeline ending off its final contracts for the amount of gas that have been paid for that they're delivering, and once that delivery is over, the volume of gas going through that gas pipeline starts to fall, like we're seeing right here. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this little interesting bit of news. Now, I got to say, that is about as interesting as one can get. And we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. We have a lot of these things, like a whole load of them. We have to include yesterday's and today's, and that's a pretty high number. I don't know if y'all have ever looked around, but anyways, we're going to be going into them. So starting off with our first bit, we saw that new shells were being used. This is something that we hear a lot about around the entirety of the world, is that there's just not enough shells. And I feel like whenever you talk to people about that situation, it feels like you're walking on eggshells, really. I mean, like, it's really something, but another thing that's great to know is that apparently the Ukrainians have partnered up with some NATO country. They didn't really give a specific name to it. They just said a NATO country, which really could be anybody in the Western world. And they have started to help the Ukrainians to produce 122mm artillery shells for the Soviet-era artillery that the Ukrainians still use. You can actually see some pictures of it right here and right here, and a little plan of it right here. I wouldn't want anyone to take a picture of that or anything. And then the next one, we can see the shells inside of their cradles. Now, Matthew, what do you think they have to do since they're in cradles? Do you think they have to get them up and burp them and, like, feed them milk or something every once in a while?
I mean, it could be baby shells, maybe.
I mean, they could be baby shells. I mean, like, they are in a cradle. And if anything gives away that they're baby shells, it's got to be that they're in a cradle right now. And then in our last picture, we can see what appears to be, I don't even know what the hell this is supposed to be, Matthew, a giant 18-wheeler trailer that's like 130 feet long?
It looks like it.
It kind of looks like it, I'm not going to lie. Or it could be a train car. I'm most likely going to go with a train car. But we can see that it's filled with 122mm shells, which is absolutely great to know that the Ukrainians can rely on NATO countries to provide that kind of support. And also, it's quite a decent number of shells, probably several hundred of them inside of this car, but interestingly enough, the Ukrainians could probably burn through these in a matter of several hours on the front line. So hopefully this kind of amount of support can keep up every single day, an even greater number than what we're seeing in this single compartment. We're now going to be moving on from that bit of a location unknown news and on into our next one, where we saw some snipers hunting down the Russians. Call these guys Predator. While they're not hanging out at playgrounds, they certainly are taking out the Russians. So here's the video. We can also hear the Jaws music, and we can see the sniper looking at the Russians. And since the Jaws music is playing, we got a pretty good idea of what's about to go on. So we can see the Russians meeting up. It looks like they're having a small sale of narcotics. We can now see the sniper firing. And lo and behold...
Wait, he said it. Blow up.
Blow up. And now we can
the shark said it.
We can see him firing at the glowing orb. Doesn't really look like a person anymore. And I couldn't really tell you if they blew him away, but I guess you could say that since it turned into an orb, he was certainly rounding them out of the conflict. Huh?
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, of course you could. Oh, buddy. Oh, man. I'm really, at this point, Maddie, I'm waiting for our internet to just die on us. Like, that's what I'm waiting for. But with that, we're moving on into our next bit of location unknown news, which y'all probably also be fairly enthused by, where you can see the Russian losses yesterday, and oh boy, if we could have just run a stream yesterday, we could have told y'all this live, but the losses were huge. They were massive, in fact. I would say that it would be a little bit too much for a single Bobcat in the wild to consume. And fortunately, we won't have to worry about a mass amount of Bobcats being around to consume, because 4 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed yesterday.
Hey, look, somebody said 4 Bobcats. Oh, that's us that said that.
Hey, look at that guy. He said 4 Bobcats.
Oh, man.
Then down here, we got, let me make sure to get the name, Gail Toops, who put, "It's Matt's childhood workshop." Look at that. Man trying to save its Bobcats. This is from 251 Weapon Works. And then we got down. Let's see. Oh, wait.
Remember to show more tweets.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's a Bobcat Party. Is that Magic Sky Girl? It's Magic Sky Girl. Yeah. Hey! And then we got Aaron Walters. I know, it's Aaron. I'm just kidding with you. Yeah. Sit down, Aaron. Have you ever seen that skit from Key and Peele?
I think so.
Yeah. Aaron. Where's Aaron at? But then we got Mr. Clucky. Now, I just got to tell you, Matthew, I think that name is just a little clucky, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Matthew, next time I do that, you're going to have to filibuster a little bit longer because I'll still sipping my coffee. I'll sit there like, dang it, he stopped. But anyways, moving on to the next one, we can see that V-Design Detroit, he put down 4 for Matt. And we can see another Bobcat right there that looks like it is
I like how he put the deadly face over the bucket.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Let's see, we got Midas Brian 23 throwing down the Bobcat as well. I love how the Lee Spring Army is really just here at this point on Twitter to just spam the Bobcat stuff on the Kyiv Independent. I'm telling you, and these were every single one of the replies to the Kyiv Independence Casualty Report is about Bobcat skid steers and at our channel. They're gonna notice this eventually. I mean, like, they will have to.
They've got to, you'd think. Like, I guess they're going to just accept that their comments are being flooded with Bobcats every day.
Yeah, there's just like, well, okay then, we'll just, we'll just sit there and, eh. But anyways, moving on from the Bobcat losses, which are absolutely phenomenal, and into real losses that really do matter on the frontline situation, 1,020 Russian soldiers were killed on March 24th, over those 24 hours. An incredibly high number. In fact, one of the highest numbers we've seen over the war. Not the highest we've ever seen, but certainly getting on up there. We also saw that 23 armored personnel carriers were destroyed as well. 12 supply trucks were destroyed. 4 tanks, 8 artillery systems, 5 drones, 2 cruise missiles, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and of course those 4 Bobcat skid steers. The losses on that day were incredibly high. And not only were they high on the 24th, they were also high today on the 25th. Here's the Russian losses today. And I don't know why it didn't copy the link to the actual tweet, because it should have. But let's go down here and let's take a look at this. Because I know what kind of comments we got today. Hey! We got more Bobcat steer losses.
Where are people finding these Bobcat pictures from? Like, I've never seen, like, a totally crispy Bobcat like the top one.
I don't know. I mean, like, this one crisped, this one on fire, this one, call that thing congratulations, because it's been cooked beyond well done. This one doing a wheelie.
That's not even a Bobcat, it's a bulldozer.
What, this one?
No, go back up one.
Yeah, that isn't even a Bobcat. That's just like a normal tractor
that's a
bulldozer.
Whole bulldozer.
Now, quick, Matthew, filibuster so I can get this last sip of coffee.
Oh, bulldozer. Wow. I get no respect around here. I get no respect.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I get no respect.
All right.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, it's terrible. Terrible. Oh, man, it's terrible.
But let's see here. Yeah, I mean, like, all of them nearly. Well, some of these aren't. Yeah, kind of sad, but, you know, most of them were. I mean, a lot of them were. The Monturn didn't even add us, just put a Bobcat in their thing. They're probably like, what the hell? Why is this being added at us? But anyways, it is absolutely great to see the Leaf Spring Army out in force on Twitter. We love to see it. And I hope that y'all join our Twitter. There's 4,200 followers on Twitter right now, at this very moment, that are, of course, supporting the Leaf Spring Army, supporting the Enforcer, and keeping our flag flying high all the way over on Twitter. So if you ever want to get involved in all of these fun shenanigans, you know where to go. The link is in the description below, and you can go and join right away and start repping the set, as we call it, over there on Twitter. Not only that, but 720 Russian soldiers were also killed today, which is just 80 soldiers short of a battalion tactical group. Not only that, 11 armored personnel carriers were also destroyed over the past 24 hours, 19 supply trucks, one of the highest numbers of the month we've seen in supply truck losses, 6 tanks, 7 artillery pieces, 6 drones, 9 MLRSs. That is 2 complete grad batteries completely wiped out over the past 24 hours, plus 1 for the funsies. We also saw another helicopter got shot down, and 2 Bobcat skid steers were lost. It is absolutely great to see these kinds of numbers. It's of course always good to know that the Russians are getting schwacked, because as the Russians get schwacked quicker, our internet gets better. So, if you ever want the internet on our end to improve, make sure to have a Russian schwacked, and maybe our little kilobytes a second will go up by literally just 1. But still,
a kilobyte.
well, it does say down here, Matthew, KB-S. I don't know if you can see that, but it says.
No, I mean like a kill a byte.
Oh, man, he's getting in the puns. Hey. I like it. I like it.
That joke, top tier.
Very nice, very nice. We're now going to be moving on from that bit of location unknown news, and we can see that a Ukrainian soldier got a gift from the VDV. And so, here's the clip. This is what the Russian VDV gave to us. AK-15s, this one, and the other guys got machine guns, SVDs, and other means of warfare. Well, surveillance. Thank you, Russia. Oh, for the trophies. I can't even read that off.
Поховалися в йобаних, сука, бліндажах і хуй вилізли. Ну, ми їх просто захуярили гранатами. Последній, да, правда, отстрелювався довго. Ну, сука, в кінці 2 гранатки зробили своє діло, і вони, сука, згоріли заживо. Друга рота 2-го штурмового батальйону, 3-ї штурмової бригади, працюємо нахуй. Не шагу назад.
Dude, this guy hyped. This guy was coming off the field like it was just a sports play. Everyone's, you know, sometimes our haters, man, they always sit there and say, the Enforcer makes it sound like a sports commentary. I don't even know what sports commentary sounds like because I've never watched sports, but this guy right here, he's coming off the field. He's like, we just ran into the trenches and wiped them out. Dude, this guy can honestly make an intro for a Mr. Beast video with that kind of hype right there.
This guy is high on the adrenaline like nothing else.
Yeah, he is. He is. And I guess you could say that at the end of it all, we found out that the VDV slash Spetsnaz, kind of, got turned into some crispy critters down there in that trench, and it looks like they'll be enjoying the rest of the war as a toasted snack. We're going to be moving on from that little bit of location unknown news, and on into our next bit where we saw a BMP drifting. Now, I know a lot of y'all are scared like we are about getting any kind of copyright infringement, but Tokyo Drifting is a song that is a pop culture favorite. It's something that everyone knows in the world, and by golly, that thing ought to be Title 17 free use. We're going to play a little bit of it here, because this guy did a sick drift and is deserving of playing the song. So here's the clip. Now we gotta mute it, but there he is doing the sick
that
drift.
Tank tread is about to pop off. They're about to have a rough day.
Dude, the pins, man, down there are like R. Kelly going, I'm fighting for my effing life. It says they're about to like slide out. But still, absolutely incredible to see this guy drifting this BMP. And who ever thought that a 25-ish ton BMP could drift like that? I mean, like, that is honestly something quite impressive, to say the least. And we're now going to be moving on from that little video clip and on into our last one from the Location Unknown segment, where we saw the Ukrainians firing an ATGM. It appears to be some kind of a Kornets or a Concours at a Russian tank, or it may even be a Stugna, although I've never seen a Stugna launcher look like that. So here's the clip. Oh, I gotta mute that, but we can see them lining up the shot. We can see them taking the shot here in a second. And there it goes, and the tank is gone. I repeat, the tank is gone. That thing got disintegrated. Call that thing Krispy Kreme, because that thing got burned with sprinkles on it. It's absolutely great to see that the thing got blown away, and it's incredible to know that the Ukrainians are still wiping out Russian armored forces day in and day out, to the point that they're having to bring in T55s into the war. Now, I had to make sure that we got into those location unknowns, because tonight there is so much news to cover in between the past 48 hours and the current 24 hours that we can't physically cover it all. So I'm trying to make sure we cover the most important stuff first. So now we're going to be moving back on up into the Sumy border area, where we saw a Russian airstrike was actually committed onto the small town of Bielopilya, just a couple of miles away from the border, which actually caused some significant damage to civilian buildings and ended up injuring and killing a few people, including 2 Ukrainian citizens. With that, here's the video. And you can see right here, the building is clearly around no military targets whatsoever. The building was directly struck by some kind of Russian munition. We're not really sure if it was a Shahed or a missile. It was one or the other, but it nearly flattened this one side of the building. It also took off the roof of the adjacent building on the other side of the street. And we can see them looking over the damage one more time. Video ending right there. But once again, another Russian terrorist attack. Once again. And it's crazy to think that this kind of stuff is normal. And I say that a lot now, but as far as the war news goes, this is about as normal a sight as a firefight, with the Russians attacking a civilian building. Now, one thing I used to see a lot at the beginning of the war is pro-Russian supporters would say something like, it really isn't a military building. The Ukrainian military was hiding in the building amongst the civilians, and so the Russians hit it because it was a military target. That still doesn't excuse the fact that there are civilians in the building, and you're supposed to be able to confirm that there are no civilians in the area whatsoever before you attack armed forces inside of a building. That's part of the U.S. rules of engagement. That's supposed to be a part of the rules of engagement of practically every country in the world, according to the rules of war. So it's still a war crime even then. But you hardly hear that now. The Russian supporters pretty much just got onto the same train that the normal Russian propagandists got into in Russia, and they now say something like, well, these Ukrainians deserve it because they support the Ukrainian government or something like that. And it's absolutely sick to think that because this has become such a normal sight, instead of the pro-Russian supporters, the small amount there are, actually reflectively thinking, wow, this is kind of messed up, this is a war crime, maybe I shouldn't support these people as much. Instead, they just justify it. And I wonder how they would justify it if this war was in the United States or wherever they may live. I wonder how they would justify this kind of stuff then. we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news on the border, which was actually on the other side, where we saw that the Kursk Oblast, which y'all may know from the annals of history, where the Battle of Kursk occurred, which was the largest armored battle to ever occur in history, the Kursk Oblast is actually building some defensive positions and putting in quite an exorbitant amount of money into building these. Here's a picture of it right here, and as you can tell, they are dragon's teeth. Now, I don't know where in the world they got the dragon to pull the teeth out of, but there appears to be a lot of these. In fact, from what we've been told, they are carpeting the entire border of the Kursk Oblast area with these dragon's teeth. These dragon's teeth and the cost to lay these down on the border is more than the amount that the Kursk Oblast spends on public housing, and also more than they spend on transportation as well, which is pretty insane considering that transportation, unlike here in the United States, is a massive government expense in Russia on the way that most Russians travel, not by car but by train. And so absolutely insane to see that they are laying down so many dragon's teeth that they're actually able to outspend themselves in the transportation sector for this oblast. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news there on the border, and we're now going to be moving on into Ukraine, into the dead center, where we saw that some sappers found some very interesting stuff. Not from this war, but from a war that happened 80 years ago. Loads of World War II's shells have been found over the past month or so during demining operations. Right here you can see a whole bunch of shells. In fact, I believe there's about 40 of them in this picture or more that were found near the small village of Orativ in the Vinnytsia Oblast. And if I go to Orativ, y'all will see how small this town really is. It's right here. This is Orativ. And so if I look at Orativ right here on like a Google Maps satellite view, you can see how small of a town it is. Maybe 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000 people living here. But you can see how many shells are under their feet as they walked around every single day for nearly 80 years and had no clue they were walking on top of 76mm and 82mm mortar shells in the dozens. The Ukrainians didn't know this. The Soviets didn't know this. Nobody knew this until they went out and started demining this area, and then they found all of the explosives. And funnily enough, they're looking for explosives from the current war, yet what they're nearly only finding is explosives from the Second World War. And most of these appear to actually be Soviet in origin, so it appears that either the Soviets had a lot of duds or they didn't use a lot of them, one or the other, but we can see them stacking them up right there. And a pretty wild side effect of this war. Not only that, but way early on in the war, and even now, back when the Ukrainians were digging defensive positions around Mykolaiv, they were actually finding Scythian artifacts down there while they were digging. Like, let me type this in real quick. A Scythian amphora. And I'll find it for y'all and show y'all a picture. They actually dug up one of these right here, which is called a Scythian amphora. Yeah, and it's actually insane because, once again, they had no idea the stuff was here, and so they started digging down and they dug onto an ancient Scythian site, and Scythians were a nomadic people who lived in the steppes of Ukraine during I would say somewhere around the 400s to 600 AD. And they, while nomadic, were very wealthy nation, had a whole bunch of neat trinkets, and this was one of them. And they actually dug this up near the Mykolaiv area, which is absolutely insane to think, and also really cool to think that an indirect thing in this war has been that, one, they're diffusing and demining areas of old munitions that have been left over since the Second World War, and even finding old bits of history, part of Ukraine's national history, that spans back thousands of years in the midst of just trying to dig a trench. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting little side story, and we're now going to be moving on back into Poland, because in Poland we actually saw yesterday that Ukrainian soldiers have been training en masse on the PT-91-20. The PT-91-20 is an upgraded version of the T-72, using explosive reactive armor provided by the West and also Western IR systems. It provides an extra level of ergonomics to the already mundane and somewhat outdated T-72. But you can see right here that Ukrainian soldiers are training on it, and at the moment, while a PT-91-20 isn't exactly advanced compared to its Western counterparts, it does fall behind the Leopard 2s, the Abrams, and so on. These things are leaps and bounds above what they would be going up against on the Russian side, considering the Russians are now using, for the bulk of their armed forces, T-62Ms, a small amount of T-55s, and an incredibly minuscule amount of T90s, T72, and T80s. So very nice to see that they're still training on these. And hundreds of these have been pledged by the Poles, and so we should see that they have a consistent and steady supply of PT-91 shorties to help bolster their armored forces until they get those primo Western tanks like the Leopard 2 Abrams and Challengers. We're now going to be moving out of Poland and back into Ukraine because, funnily enough, we have covered all of the international news and also all of the location unknown news already. And so now it's time for us to get on into the frontline news, which is massive. It's a load. So before we get into it, I have to mentally prepare because this whole entire next segment requires a decent amount of preparation and thinking. And the way we do this on this stream is to go over polls, which are also incredibly interesting to talk about as well, while I try and get mentally prepared to cover a million different things. So we're now going to hand it over to Matthew so that way he can guide us through the polls. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and it is now time for the polls and questions segment, the first one of the stream. Thankfully, not too many lag issues thus far. Hopefully that doesn't jinx it. But anyways, getting on to our first poll, it says...
I had to knock on wood there. I had to knock on wood so that we didn't get screwed over right there. Go ahead, though.
Okay, well, I'm glad it was you. But anyways, the first poll says, Russia says it will station nuclear missiles in Belarus, and they're upgrading aircraft to carry them. And what are your thoughts? 53% said, who cares? It doesn't change anything. 28% said, not good. NATO must respond. 6% said, unsure. And 13% said, maybe it's just a bluff. And on this one, we have known that this might happen since late January and early February of this year. And it turns out that the Russians have decided to go ahead and do that. They're not turning over the nuclear missiles to Belarus for their control. Instead, they're just using it as a base of operations to put the nukes in. That is concerning, and I've heard a lot of, the experts, take that how you want to take it, say that that could be shifting the balance of nuclear power in Europe. It's hard to tell what's hype and what's not at this point, but from the experts, but that's what they say. And honestly, I think NATO is going to have to do something. We're going to shift our nukes around to counter it, just as a show of force, I think. But Enforcer, what say you?
Now, the Belarusians are getting the nukes, or the Russians are putting their nukes in Belarus?
The Russians are just putting their nukes in Belarus.
They announced that in March last year, too.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that because I think we actually covered that here on this channel a year ago at this point, is that they did that back then, and then everyone on the news went, oh my god, it's about to go into nuclear war, and I think they're doing it again just for the hype train of things. I mean, it doesn't really change anything considering that the nukes are intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they already reach around the world from in Russia, so what does it really matter if they're in Belarus?
Yeah, but I think the ones they're moving into Belarus are the tactical nukes. I don't think the West recognizes tactical nukes or not, but they're building some kind of new storage facility where they're going to store them in Belarus so they can be used.
Russians, think about that, Matthew. Building a storage facility. That's literally going to be one of those sheds you buy for $10,000 to put in your backyard that's made out of like aluminum. They're not building any kind of nuclear silos for those things, most likely. I don't know what they would be making to store them, but I would say that's not really that much of a concern, in my opinion. I believe we actually heard something like that last year, and I believe back then it was actually the Topol M's, and I'll put those in and show y'all Topol M's right here, the mobile intercontinental ballistic missile launchers that were traveling around through Belarus and also Russia, ready to fire off their nuclear missiles. As far as I understand it, there's only 16 of these, so that wasn't really that scary to hear of, and on top of that, they're intercontinental, so it doesn't matter whether they're in Belarus or Russia, they will fire and they will travel however far their range is, which is all the way to America, so it didn't really matter. I would say that it's not really that scary on top of that because we have nuclear weapons inside of Germany ready to go that we can equip onto aircraft. So, it doesn't really change much in my opinion. It just sounds like a bunch of hype talk and fear talk, and it doesn't really change the situation much. But that's just my opinion. And so with that, I hope we addressed that.
And also, before we get off this one, real quick, punch up or Google Iskander M missile, because that's the one that they're sending, and see what that one looks like compared to the one you just showed.
The Iskander. So the Iskander has actually been used in against Ukraine with a conventional warhead several times over the course of this war.
I believe it's the M variant, if there is a such thing.
We can go down to the variants here, and we can try and find it. The Iskander M. It's a quasi-ballistic missile with published range of 415 kilometers, rumored to be about 500 kilometers. Quote unquote, 350 miles. It flies about Mach 6 to Mach 7, up to about 50 kilometers at the highest part of its flight. It's a nuclear-capable stealth missile, controlled at all stages, not basic flight path. Immediately after the launch and upon approach to the target, the missile performs intensive maneuvering to evade anti-ballistic missiles. The missile constantly maneuvers during flight as well. That's interesting. I believe the current one, the normal one, does that as well, if I remember correctly, but that's interesting to hear that it can do something like that. But I'm kind of doubting, to be honest with you, Matthew, that this thing is stealth, because if it was stealth, why does it need to conduct intensive maneuvering to evade anti-missile missiles? If it was stealth, it wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I wonder what the Russians define as stealth, like being less loud, comrade.
What they probably identify as stealth is not looking like the Empire State Building on a radar crossing, so it just looks like it's normal size. They're like, yes, stealth. I don't believe it's stealth, though, because this thing doesn't really look like it would be stealth. Nothing about this screams stealth. The thing nearly looks like a Scud missile, and the Scud was not stealth. So I feel like that's a straight-up lie. Yeah, it can maneuver into the target to try and evade missiles, but that would be counterintuitive and completely a waste of time and resources to make a missile that's stealth where it can't be fired at, but then also to make it conduct intensive maneuvers so that way it can evade the missiles that are being fired at it. There's a hole in that description there somewhere. Either it isn't stealth or it doesn't maneuver, but I would put more bets on it isn't stealth and it does maneuver, because I believe we've actually heard that information stated before about this thing. So, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least about the Iskander, and this does not even look, I guess in a public eye, as scary as a Topol M. I mean, like, look at this Iskander launcher, and then let's go back to the Topol M. Now, imagining this thing driving around in Belarus, that is kind of a little scary to think about. This thing, though, this thing looks like it's a large Estes rocket launcher.
Yeah, I'm always kind of like shocked by the size of these trucks that carry these things. Do they really need to be this bulky to carry it?
I think they might, for the hydraulics of lifting these things up out of their bays, but at the same time, they always make them, like, exorbitantly huge. And, it's a good question. Why are they always that big? If anyone knows the answer, let us know, because we'd be interested. But
I wonder if part of it's just for the intimidation factor of it, like such a massive vehicle for a intimidating looking nuke. Like, is it a psyop type thing, or is there actual engineering reason behind it?
It's psyops.
Hey.
But I don't know. I think there may actually be a little bit of an engineering theory behind it, but at the same time, we'll probably never get the answer to that, because you know what the answer to that question would be, Matthew, if we asked anyone in the military. It's classified, so we'd never get an answer. So anyways, I wouldn't really consider that this scary, and considering that the range of an Iskander K, if I'm correct, Iskander M, is about 350 miles, let's measure that out. All right, everyone, whip out your ruler. That's a little whip out your ruler from Baronovici. I don't know why that sounded wrong, and I'm glad you picked up on that. But 350 miles is... So the only people who would be at threat from this missile are Poland and Latvia and Lithuania. That would be it. Or Ukraine. That's it. Those are the only things that are within range of an Iskander M. And so, unlike a Topol or an intercontinental ballistic missile like the Satan or, the Sarmat, this thing doesn't have that much of a range. So, when they move that into the area, it's like, oh, what are you going to do? You just fire that thing so we can shoot it down? It's like, come on. And then on top of that, if it got scary enough, I bet you that we would launch that rapid dragon thing and blow the stupid things up before they could even get used if we thought they were going to be used. So, it's like, yeah, it's not really that scary in my opinion. So with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says, Zelensky says that Ukraine does not have enough weapons to conduct the spring offensive, and what are your thoughts? 53% said it's probably true and we need to fix it, 9% said unsure, 17% said it could be an exaggeration, and 21% said it's probably only a feint. Now, on this one, I've seen a lot of people argue that it's probably Zelensky simply saying that to lure the Russians in, but my thing is this, though. The Russians are already in there pretty much as strong as they can be at the moment. So I'm not sure exactly what we're trying to lure in at this point. They're already trying their hardest, and they're still losing. I think it's probably true, and Zelensky is simply waiting on the guaranteed deliveries to show up at this point, and the West has made efforts to speed it up, but apparently it's not fast enough, according to Zelensky. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that's more of a feint, in my opinion, because one, considering that there has been a statement out there somewhere that someone actually got in trouble for saying they were out of munitions in a certain part of the front line. That seems a little weird that would come out from the very top of the government, that the Ukrainian military is nearly out of weapons. So I would say that due to the kind of images that we've been seeing, the stories that we've been hearing, not really lining up, I would say that they probably do have weapons. They probably do have enough weapons to launch this counteroffensive. And on top of that, we already saw that back in Balaklia's time, back when that offensive occurred, the Ukrainians just a week and a half before that offensive happened said that they didn't have enough weapons to launch offensives and they needed more weapons. And then I said, well, they do. They don't have to wait on Western support. They've got plenty right now. They can launch a successful offensive there. And then everyone went, oh, you're contradicting the Ukrainian government. And then a week and a half later, they took the largest swath that anyone's ever taken so far in this war in the counterattack. So, based off of that precedent, and also based off of the Kherson precedent, which was also the exact same, they were saying they didn't have enough equipment, they didn't have enough vehicles, blah, 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 and then they took Kherson. I would have to say that this is something leading into a feint, because it wouldn't make much sense to get one guy in trouble because he says they're running low on weapons and say that's untrue, and then on an official governmental level say we're running out of weapons, we need more weapons, and then also telling every single media outlet that's inside of Ukraine near the front lines, don't say anything about what's going on the front lines right now, because then that also shows that something is probably happening. So I would have to say it's most likely a feint, all things considered. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our third and last poll of the first question segment says, reports say that Russian authorities are selling properties and moving out of Crimea, and what are your thoughts? 83% said Russians know what is coming next, 11% said it's just overhyped news, 4% said unsure, and 2% said maybe it's not related to the war. And I was very, very happy to hear this little piece of news, because I doubt the Russian authorities are going to want to move out of their vacation spot unless they're forced to move out. So they must have gotten wind that something is coming their way in Crimea. And a good question I've been seeing a lot of people ask is, who are they selling these properties to? Because it doesn't make much sense from an investment standpoint to buy a property that might be inundated by a war that becomes an absolute flattened war zone. Maybe it's Chinese investors buying it. I don't really know. But Enforcer, what say you?
Meanwhile, on Wall Street bets, check out your chic summer hair she got at your vegetable.
Yeah, man, this is a good investment right here. Speculative investment.
And I'm telling you, man, this is like that GameStop. I gotta be honest with you, I don't know who's buying these things. I don't even know if they're actually selling. Like, I don't know if anyone's actually buying them. Maybe they're just putting them up for sale, and that's it. No one's buying them. But I don't really know who would be buying them, really. Like, I'm trying to think about that. Some people are saying the Chinese, but the Chinese are going to buy something that's probably going to get blown up in the next couple of months, because that's not a return on your investment. That's just a loss. So I don't know who would be buying them. Maybe other Russian suckers that think they are actually getting a steal will buy them, and then they get screwed. Could
you imagine a realtor in Crimea trying to show a house like on the coastline? They're like, oh, beachfront view, comrade. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. What is that outside though? And then they see that like trench they dug along the coastline. Oh, nothing. It's just a shower.
They sit there. Could you give me a synopsis of what Sevastopol it looks like, since this house is so close to it? Yes. Opens up the sheet. Filled with the bodies of dead Russian soldiers, NATO aircraft blissfully soar through the skies over our great city. And they're like, this is a very nice description. Like exposed beams in the living room kind of thing,
Yes.
But I don't know who would be buying them, but on top of that, that shows something fairly interesting. Because as y'all know, people in economics are a very scared and reactive bunch of people. And whenever they see something may not be going that well for whatever they've invested in, they go and practically destroy an entire economic system to try and get out. So that may be what these people are doing, is that they're crashing the real estate economy in Crimea because they see that they are probably going to be losing those properties anyways, and it's better to leave and sell their properties, even if it's at a massive loss to what they originally bought it, than lose everything. So I hope that addresses the poll fairly well, and I think if that is as good an indicator, that is a great indicator to show that the Russians apparently are planning to lose Crimea at some point, because the public has already picked up on it, and they're already selling off their houses en masse. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of poll and on into the next one, or the question segment, more like.
All right, and we are out of polls now, so we're moving into our first Super Chat questions. And for everyone asking, we have once again combined last night's Super Chats with tonight's Super Chats, so we're going to cover them all again tonight. Luckily, the stream didn't run very long last night, so there's not too many to cover. So
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Yes, just 10 minutes before the internet pooped on us completely. But the first Super Chat goes to none other than Jesus UCSB, who puts in a $50 donation, and Jesus says, "Hola. Reminder, I'm the NAFO Mexican tanker that introduced you to Vilseck, Germany. Vilseck and Graf training area will be the launch point to send the vehicles to Ukraine. Hashtag LSA, hashtag Viva Vilseck, and hashtag Tanker Jesus."
And thank you so much for the support, Jesus. And I like how Jesus said that, like I forgot him. He's like, "Remember me? I'm that guy." It's like, no, I didn't forget you. That, like, every time we bring up Vilseck, I'm always thinking about you. And like that, you were the one who actually showed us that, and also has a very nice town connected to the training base at Vilseck. Right here, there's Vilseck, right here. And Maddie, here's the Berg Dagestan. It's dank up in it's dank up in Dagestan. But wow, look at this.
That's a castle?
Yeah, apparently it is, and they even got a whole falcon here.
A whole falcon? What, are they going to have like a half of a falcon?
I thought they would usually have like a quarter falcon, kind of like a quarter pounder with cheese, but I mean, like, this is pretty neat. Wait a minute, is that a Tatar? What the hell? This is the middle of Germany. But this is pretty neat. It's like I guess it's like a Ren Fair thing that happens at this castle. I don't know, but pretty neat nonetheless. And also there's the guy with the hawk again. It's not a falcon, it's actually a hawk. And dang, does this guy have a platypus? Perry the platypus? But anyways.
What, is that for real? What is that thing?
I don't know what that thing was. Like, it looked like the fur of a platypus, but I don't really know if it was. That thing funky looking, though. I don't know what that thing
different.
is. But anyways, moving on from that, yes, I do remember, Jesus, that you're the one who introduced us to Vilseck. Because while all the medieval Ren Fair stuff's going on in Vilseck itself, up here, there's a lot of real action going on with guys who kind of do wear armor, which is a whole 60-ton Abrams. And it's great to know that Vilseck is one of the major training grounds that we're using in Europe right now to get armored vehicles ready to be sent into Ukraine and used there. So with that, thank you so much once again for support, Jesus. Thank you for sharing that neat little tidbit with us. And also, I hope that you went to Papenburg, because I guess they could call you the big Papen of Vilseck. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you.
All right, and our next one goes to Richard Rohde, who puts in a $25 donation. And Richard says, "Have you looked into using a VPN?" And Mark from CA/NZ/US. Oh, he's talking about Mark Slav Ukraine. He said he may be able to be helpful.
maybe he could help us out in that. And I thank you so much for the support as well. And to answer that question, we have looked into a VPN before, and I'll explain. Excuse me? You got a little bit of something in your throat over there, sir?
Yes.
Well, I won't get into exact details, but VPNs throttle internet connections terribly. Like, if you think the internet connectivity issues we're having right now are bad, wait until we flick a VPN on, and then our internet goes completely to zero, nearly. So, we have looked into it before, we have tried that before, and it doesn't really work for us. I do know that it will work for people in most situations, but for live streaming, when you need a lot of connectivity, it doesn't really work there. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And Mark probably good help, because of one thing we've learned from his super chats, he is Mr. Worldwide. He goes from Canada to the United States to New Zealand in 5 minutes flat. Either he is being sent from place to place through teleportation, or he's using a VPN. And that brings us to our sponsor for tonight's stream. I'm just kidding. We're not sponsored by anyone, but still, thank you once again. Hope we addressed that fairly well. And I gotta tell you, Matthew, drinking that coffee in the middle of the stream is not good. That's not a good idea. But with that,
Yeah, I learned to drink coffee, starting like sip it for like a straight hour right before it starts is perfect for me.
you know what I want to do? I want to have one of those little Turkish. Let me show you Turkish coffee things. Let me see if I can find a picture of it here. Yeah, like this. Like for some reason, this seems like really like pizzazzy. You know, the little Turkish coffee things.
It seems is that like a Moscow Mule cup it's like being poured in?
I don't know what that is,
Or
but I
poured
know,
out of?
but I just know that this is like a Turkish thing, kind of like a Turkish bath and other stuff. This is just like something from the Ottoman Empire, and they were like huge into coffee. For some reason, this is like the ritzy looking way in my mind to drink a coffee. But yeah, anyways, and
I like straight up espresso if I can get it, just straight up, nothing in it.
man, I like that cold
Be a
brew.
man.
You know what? We need to be men, Matthew. We need to be masculine man. I drink piss without sugar. But anyway,
Yes.
and I went on. Oh wait, I can't do that one because that one's a little too on the nose. But anyways, with that, I should not drink coffee this close to the stream. Paul Bat said coffee is awful. You know, never have I been so disagreeing with that with a statement like that, yet so in agreement with it at the same time, because coffee tastes terrible, but at the same time it's necessary for me to run this thing, because that's the only way I've survived 395 days of the war. So with that, and Donna also, man, he said don't drink a Turkish bath. I wouldn't. Honestly,
Ugh.
I don't know what the hell would be in that water, like some nasty. Have you ever seen what a Turkish bath looks like though, Matthew?
I have actually, and I definitely wouldn't drink the water out of it.
Let me show you what a Turkish bath looks like. Okay, these aren't really these are like modern renditions of a Turkish bath. I'm talking like a legit Turkish bath. And I can't really find one. But I'm finding these semi-provocative pictures here that are supposed to be conveying something else. So we're going to move on from that. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're getting right back into the news.
All right, and our last one of the first segment goes to AJ, who puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much, AJ, for the
Holy
support.
moly.
He says, dude, you just initiated the whole Falcon and Platypus divisions of the LSA.
I decree upon my order that we shall create the platypus and the whole falcon of the Lee Spring Army.
You know, we've actually been working a little bit behind the scenes, at least I have, on trying to figure out how to make the Lee Spring Army a little bit more army-ish. You know, I'm not talking about like making a militia or anything, because that's you know, that's not territory we want to enter. But at least on the internet, having like a little fun thing to do and some neat imagery and stuff to go along with it. We're still working on redesigning the flag. I still have to reach out to Buga, our original flag designer, who made the flag. Of course, I cannot give Nutters enough credit though, because Nutters designed like a million different flags and they were all top of the line. Nutters is really good at what he does, I have to say. But Buga was the winner, and we're going to be reaching out to him and trying to have our flag redesigned, because we got so many comments that it looks like a red, it looks like an iron cross, that it started to make me question if we actually made this an official thing and it started going everywhere. What kind of what kind of people are going to be sitting there and going, oh, they kind of looks like an iron cross, and it's not supposed to be. So we have to redesign it now. We're probably going to be keeping the exact same design, just making the cross in the background like a purplish red-ish color, probably, to try and make it look different than everything else. And then I'll be working on propaganda posters. I'll probably be trying to get some artists up to make some old vintage-ish looking propaganda posters from like the 1940s and the 1910s, and try and make them Lee Spring Army related. So Lee Spring Army imagery, come up with all kinds of uniforms for the Lee Spring Army and stuff like that. So that way y'all can have cool wallpapers for your computer, cool Twitter profile pictures and things like that, because I think that would be really cool. And so with that, I got to thank you so much for the support, AJ. And we'll probably be trying to create some kind of one thing I do want to do though with like the Leaf Spring Army presence online is not make it too jokey, like, a little on the nose, but not too jokey. So we'll probably have like the old guard. The old guard will exist. We'll just call it the Enforcer's Old Guard or something like that, and then we'll have a whole bunch of other units. We'll probably try and divide it up to where y'all are in the world and come up with symbology that's distinct to where you are. Like if it's Northern Europe, come up with Northern European symbology and, so on. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are now moving out of this question segment, and we're now moving right back into the news. And now I have to go into overdrive because there are about probably 50 different little video clips that I have to show y'all. So starting in Speculative, we saw that over the past 48 hours, right here, that... And let me go back to the 23rd, 24th, 25th. Nothing happened. Look at that. So we're now moving into Speculative, where we saw that that Russian headquarters got hit by HIMARS. It was kind of a little shocking. I would say that they didn't expect it. But one thing that you did hear before the explosion was this. La 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 la. It gets hit. The HQ was blown away. And we see little chunks and pieces floating back down to the ground, and the second HIMARS hitting their headquarters. Wow. Very precise.
Wow.
I turned into that guy, man, that looks like William Shakespeare that went, wow.
Yeah.
But man, what accuracy right there. And the headquarters was completely blown away. This was somewhere in the Speculative area. Great to see. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news on the front lines, where we can also see that the Russians were hit by an ATGM today, a Stugna nonetheless. Well, you see them lining up the shot, firing. That was just a quiet little boom right there. We now see it flying, shooting off little sparks of light to celebrate the incoming wipeout that it was about to get. And the boom, the chugga chugga, it's gone. That's the end of that clip, but a very nice Stugna shot for sure. We're now going to be moving further down the northeastern area where we saw the Azov absolutely destroying the Russians. If you ever wanted to see something nice... Oh, it's Chad music, Matthew.
Oh, yeah, that was about to be a hardcore track right there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we gotta mute that. But it's making me feel like eating a bowl of cereal without any milk. We can see the artillery hitting the Russians in the tree line now. We can see one of them trying to make a run for it here in the wide open, but he'll be got by a smaller shell. They had to bring in the little one for that. We now see him kind of sitting around and breathing in. And we see a 200 and a 300 there at the bottom of the screen, telling us that these guys are having a very unfun time. This is like a trip to your average Six Flags. I slurred that so badly. But anyways, we can see them getting hit still. In case if you're not from the United States, Six Flags is a chain of amusement parks here in America that have been known through the years to be the roller coaster capitals of the country, and also in recent years have started to have some safety concerns. Anyways,
man, you missed an opportunity to like convince them it was like a military alliance. Like, have you ever heard of Six Flags?
Do an absolute schizo post. Six Flags is actually a NORAD installation. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news right there and further on down the line. And now we're moving into the area of Bakhmut. Before we get to Bakhmut, however, we still have a little bit of news to cover near Vimivka and Zaporizhzhia, where we saw a Ukrainian ammo explosion. And I had to show this one because this was a Russian video, and the Russians celebrated this like it was the 4th of July, I swear. Like, I'm going to play the music and everything because it isn't copyrighted. It was by the Red Army Choir, and they've been demonetized here on YouTube, so I know I can get away with playing this. But here's the clip because this was hilarious to me. They're playing the march of Stalin's artillery in this video, and you're about to watch like a sparkler in size go off, and they're treating it like they destroyed all of Ukraine's ammunition. So here's the clip. So they have their little drone flying over. And, you know, and it's looking around, and you see the artillery shell there hit from the Russian artillery, while this music absolutely blares in the background. And so what did they hit? I mean, I don't see any ammo explosion happening. And now we see it, a little firecracker-sized explosion off the center of the shell even hitting. And it's like goes on for the next minute and 20 seconds, and it's the smallest explosion I've ever seen that anyone's called an ammo dump. And the Russians are treating this thing like it is Victory Day. I mean, it's stupid. So you can see, like, when the crosshair covers it, you can't even see the fire. You see like a rabbit or something running through the field. And there it is without the night vision on, and look, it's a campfire. Oh. And they're treating it like it's the biggest thing ever. That's the funniest thing about this. They're so sad and pitiful that even a Roman candle is a big deal for them. So
I've seen worse fires in Moscow at their gas plants.
Dude, I've seen worse anywhere. And now it finally has a little explosion. And then that's it. It wasn't like one of those open air mine pits that we see from the Russians that blows up like a small nuclear bomb or anything. It was a small little roaring fire, and then it blows up like a 100-pound bomb, and then that's it. It's like that is.
Wait. You're forgetting though. The Russians are running into battle with sticks. So what kind of ammo does a stick use?
Man,
it's literally their ammo dump. It's a sticks. A pile of sticks.
They're literally like those Tusken Raiders from Star Wars that sit there with the little muskets and they put them over their head on everything they win and they go anything like that. That's what they're like at this point. But anyways, we're gonna be moving on from that clip and on into the next bit of news further behind the line, where we saw a HIMARS barrage underway. And DF Percush said that's not a depot, that's a cache, and I think it may be a cache. We now see the HIMARS firing into the sky. Look at him go. Meanwhile, Amazon Prime is still making those deliveries in the background.
Quick! Bezos might be mad! Go! No bathroom breaks!
Dude, Bezos is about to get on the crotch rocket and fly over there and beat the hell out of him in a minute if they don't get that delivery done. And they're still firing. That must be a Mars or several HIMARS firing together. I love the sound of that. It honestly sounds like waves crashing on the beach.
It does. With a little bit of percussion.
Nicholas Condor thought I meant cache, seriously. I know it's cash. I just said cache for the hell of it. You're gonna have to go to the depot for that. I'm sorry. But, man, isn't that nice sounding? And they're firing off loads of these things. There goes another one. I think that's... Nope, that's not it. It's still not it. We're still listening to it. My god, that's got to be like 4 HIMARS firing at a time. Like, there's just so many missiles. The most expensive white noise machine in the world right here. you for several $1 million of sound, you get some wave sounds from the beach. We're now going to be moving on from that HIMARS launch and on into the Bakhmut area. And suffice it to say, the Ukrainians have actually regained ground.
In Bakhmut?
In Bakhmut, believe it or not. And I'm going to show you where. So over the past 24 hours, as you can see here, it's kind of a little bit of an even exchange, though, but I'm going to have to kind of like downplay what the Russians did because it's not really anything if you look at the map. So over yesterday, the Russians pushed forward through no man's land, as you can see here, but the Ukrainians also pushed forward through no man's land as well and regained several city blocks down here, I guess you could say, in the southeastern region of control. Over today, however, the Russians... Now, this is a little bit deceptive because this is a lake, so there's no real place for anyone to, like, stand or walk in this area, but it's been counted as a Russian victory today, right in this area. So they really only took this one street that crossed the creek, so I don't really count that as a massive amount of ground gained, but we did see that the Ukrainians were able to resecure several city blocks in the center of Bakhmut, showing that even though the Russians are throwing everything they have into the city, there's still pushback. Moving on into our video clips from the area in the northeast, we saw some fighting in the trenches near Bakhmut, taken from a Ukrainian soldier just today. We can hear a gunshot in the distance. We can now see the Ukrainian soldier getting up and firing his AK. We can now see him firing some more. We now see him running over to the next dugout, firing into the distance again. We now hear some more guns firing. We don't know whose guns are firing. We now see him reloading. And now we hear maybe some return
Не
fire
буду
right there.
коментувати, наскільки близько воги розірвалися, але пизда. Всі живі, поки на адреналіні, зараз перевіримо особовий склад, як прийняв.
Now see him whipping out the nade launcher and firing one off. We now see later on, he's still moving through the trenches.
Де мій автомат, нахуй? Заїбали, сука.
Moving into a dugout.
Здава, блядь.
He's now grabbing an AK. Hold on, Igor, don't pull out the 9. He starts aiming the AK again and firing it into the distance. And that's the end of the clip, but a little look at one of the firefights going on the western ridge of Bakhmut. We're now going to be moving further on down and into the city itself, where we saw a Ukrainian sniper team at work in one of the, well, that post was removed by the moderator. We're now moving on to the next clip, where we saw the Ukrainians taking out a building. Now, this is an interesting title because they're not going to be showing you the building they took out in the distance. They're actually going to be taking out the building they're standing in right now. The backblast from this ATGM is so strong that apparently it blows off some parts of the roof at the back of this room and also some of the wall, which falls on the camera. So here's the video. Did he hit him? That's the end of the clip. But a little bit of a look at the Ukrainians still doing their job in Bakhmut. We're now going to be moving further on down and into the center of the city, where you can see the Russians in a firefight, and they say it's gas. But is it really? Or did one of these guys have Taco Bell? Here's the clip. We can see the Russians looking out of an opening.
Наблюдаешь, давай, дави его.
Here's some firing.
Так, тихо, у нас...
You now see that guy backing away. The next guy is going up to the opening. This is Mr. Lunchtime's nephew, Mr. Dinner Time. He's now getting up to the opening, and he's firing as well. And we can see this guy back here, Mr. Rain Boots, who looks like he's ready to enter a paintball match as soon as the air horn sounds, who is now going to be moving up and taking his place.
Стой, не высовывайся. Над нами птица, стой, над нами.
And now you see a explosive explode right out of the building.
Стой, аккуратно, смотри, наблюдай.
Now you see him moving forward.
Хорошо, работай,
Russian soldiers still firing out of the opening.
Что такое?
And now And now this guy is coughing. We don't really know why. And so this guy is yelling gas, but I don't think... Like, okay, I'm going to let the video end here. So this guy is yelling gas, like there's gas outside, but the problem here is that if it was gas, they wouldn't be safe inside of the building with a giant hole in the side of it. They would be coming in the building. So we don't, I don't really...
the other guy's okay if he's breathing some
Yeah,
kind
you know,
of
like
gas.
the other guy just went right in front of the opening and looked out of it, and for some reason he didn't breathe in the gas. So, fake news. But I had to show it to y'all because I thought it was hilarious that the Russians were trying to stage a gas attack. We're now moving on to the next clip of news behind the lines and on the eastern side of Bakhmut, where we saw that the Wagner has somehow gathered up all the remaining T-90Ms inside of Russia and they're rolling them all into Bakhmut. Here's a picture from the Wagner unit. You can see 5 T-90Ms in this picture right here, which is a little bit hard to think because that is a third of all of their remaining T-90Ms in the entire war. They only had 30 of them to start with. 15 of them have been destroyed. So seeing 5 of them means that almost 1 out of every 3 T-90Ms left are somewhere around the Bakhmut area right now. So hopefully the Ukrainians can get on top of this one and blow these guys away, because then that means the Russians will only have about 10 T-90Ms left. And so, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, and further on into the western side of Bakhmut, where we saw that Zelensky actually visited Bakhmut just the other day. You see him taking pictures with the 57th Brigade right here, and also moving around and taking a look at the facilities, which is pretty interesting to see, and great to know that Zelensky isn't afraid to get that close to the front. We're now going to be moving on back a little bit further, where we can see some Ukrainian soldiers petting a kitten in the city as well. Here's the clip. When you hear some slow, sad piano being played, and we see them petting the small cat, the cat is enjoying the petting. And it seems like that cat's really cute. I like it. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, a little bit further behind the lines, where we see that Ukraine needs more weapons. According to Zelensky, he says they need more weapons to launch a counteroffensive for Bakhmut. We already covered this in a poll. I don't really think that's necessarily true. I think it's more of a feint, but that is the official statement as of the moment. We're now going to be moving on back into the city and further south, where we saw a battle in the streets with the 93rd Brigade.
В наушниках все нормально, да? Это хуйня дикая, блядь.
You now see the Ukrainian soldiers talking to each other and reloading an RPG-7, while another one holds an AK-74, I believe. Maybe an AK-105.
Заебали сегодня, весь день пиздуют, гандоны.
Well, you see the ground still covered with snow here in this video, which shows that it is a little bit of an older one, but we got it today, so it is being shown today. He's now running out into the open.
Ёб твою мать.
Aiming and firing. The RPG then explodes down the street.
Туда? Давай, еще одну быстренько.
Now see him running back to grab the other RPG round and load it.
Нихуя себе, РПГшник.
That's a skinny round.
It is very skinny. They should have fed it a little bit more, but I think they didn't want to. They wanted to be lean. Fly much nicer. We can now see him aiming it again. Firing. RPG round exploding at the end of the street. Ukrainian soldier covering him with AK fire. They're now running back.
Чтоб не выебывались, гандоны.
And with that, that's the end of the video. A little bit old, not really relevant to today's situation, but very interesting clip. We're now moving on to the next bit, where I can see that Prigozhin actually went against the narrative the other day and said that he denies the claims that the Russians are trying to denazify Ukraine because he doesn't really see many Nazis in Ukraine. In fact, he sees a lot of Nazis in the Wagner unit instead. So, you know, so he doesn't really see what they're saying.
Well, he's in charge of it.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But yeah, you know, that's what he said, and we're just running with it. The Institute of the Study of War said it, so if they said it, they can't be wrong. You know, there's a lot of experts, and I'm not dissing on ISW, but I am using the moment right here. Matthew, there's a lot of experts out there, Matthew, that have tons more experience than us, and I'm sure we need to kneel and completely submit our opinions to whatever their whims may be.
Oh, facts.
Oh, facts. Send that straight to the fax machine because that is straight up facts. Anyways, moving on. Anyways, we're moving on into the next clip.
America Online.
Yeah, sure, man. You keep telling
Before your
yourself
time.
that. Anyways, we're moving on to the next clip where we can see some fighting in Bakhmut again. This is from today. We hear some artillery explosions going on outside. The cameraman's looking out the window. And we see the explosion in the distance. Most likely a Russian artillery shell. And so with that, that's the end of that clip, but another instance of the fighting. We're now moving into the next one where we saw a grad barrage, and we actually got to hear what it sounds like on the receiving end in the middle of the city. Rockets exploding right in front of the cameraman and right around him. The cameraman's now getting up and running for the building, but that's what a grad barrage sounds like when you're pretty much in the middle of it. And if y'all don't get how terrifying that really is from the audio alone, I don't know what would convince one, but that is quite a terrifying sound for sure. We're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news inside of the city, where we saw a little bit of footage from the rear of Bakhmut, more in the controlled area of the city.
Бахмут, 24 березня. Охотники змеи на выезде опять. Вот вам Бахмут, 24 число. Район самолета.
When you see them driving past, we can actually see right there the former MiG monument that was previously destroyed a while ago.
Район самолета. Це по нас уже дивись по камнях. Давай, пацай вперед.
And that copyright music is getting loud and juicy. We're going to have to mute it, but we can see them driving on as fast as they can through the city to get to their position. And that's the end of the video, but giving you a look at what the rear lines in Bakhmut appeared to look like. We're now moving on to our next clip where we also saw an update from Bakhmut by Roman.
Hello, voices for Ukraine. So it's Roman again. I'm again fight near Bakhmut. So this time from another side, where is the one of the hottest place, where the enemy try to surrounded the city. So we're here in our new position, and so nothing changed. We're preparing food. We watching enemy. We fighting. Nothing changed, and our motivation infinity. That's why we're here. We continue doing what we're supposed to do, and this is who we are.
Well, that's the end of the clip, but of course, another update from our boy Roman. We're now moving on into the next clip of news, further outside of the city and more in the southern flank, if the map moves, where we can see Azov in the battle. Here's a little clip of what the Azov boys been doing, and of course they're doing what they do. When you see them driving a Mista S right here with some country-sounding music in the background, it inspires me to do a Sam Elliott, but I don't know if people would like that. We now see him talking about what they do, but sadly there's no subtitles, so we can only see him saying "bring it on" and waving his arms, saying what you here for? You talking to me? We now see the Mista getting ready to fire. Now see him getting into the turret of the Mista. You see there's a little bit of a tight squeeze. We can see a Paladin driving by? I didn't know what kind of SPG that was. We can now see the Mista getting ready to fire. We now see the Mista S firing and hitting its target. Have you ever wanted to find yourself the right kind of SPG for the job? Well then sit back and relax, because I'm about to tell you about the all-new Mista S SPG. Though first in class of Russian artillery, although not the first in class for any other country, the Mista S is somewhat accurate, somewhat okay, but it does get the job done. Watch it sit here and blow away these Russian scum like nothing. Russian firepower for Russian rats. Or something like that. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see that they were able to blow them away. And it looks like this may actually be a eulogy of all the Russians that just got blown away in that last barrage.
Wait, no guts. Wait a minute, hold on. I think I get the voice.
Guts.
No guts, no glory, rats.
So then we're moving on into the next clip where we saw some danger close artillery actually managed to help some Ukrainian soldiers. So here's the video. Actually, I'm sorry, everyone. We're going to have to cut this one from tonight because I just realized it's 9 minutes and 21 seconds long. And if I played this whole clip, the rest of the news is going to be massively overtime. But if y'all do want to watch this clip, go into the link in the description below. Click on the link for the map. It's the day 395 map. You can't miss it. Go click on it. Click on it now. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. And then go click on this link, and you'll be able to watch it yourself. And so with that, we're now moving on to our next clip where we saw the road to Bakhmut. Bleed. The change lasted for 45 to 45 minutes. Minus thermal amateurs, minus phones, minus one of our brothers.
Мінус телефони, мінус один наш побратим. Вон, дорога.
Here's the road to Bakhmut. Andrei, say hello to your compatriots. Hello. Here's the price of freedom. Here's the road to Bakhmut.
Скажи привет.
Say hello, hello. You see the hands are in place, the legs are also in place, so do not pretend. You're already here for the third time. Everything is fine. Where are you going, I wonder? Where are you going to get up? So Samsung phones save lives. What? Samsung phone is a level 3 plate. Now you see him looking at another wounded soldier, and the video ends there, but fairly interesting to see, and of course, they're messing them up. We're now moving on into our next clip, outside of the Bakhmut area and further south, where we saw some attacks from above, or more so, pictures of the attacks from above, from these Ukrainian Mi-24s who were still flying in the area, and of course committing the rocket attacks on a regular basis. We're now going to be moving out of that area and further south and into the Donetsk region. Of course, no frontline changes have occurred here, but the first video clip we got was showing us what a typical Ukrainian dinner for a typical Ukrainian soldier looks like. And we've got that copyright-free Spinning Monkeys music playing in the background, and we can see some mashed potatoes right there. We can see dog food with onions. I don't know what that is. We can see a charcuterie plate, I think, and clams? I don't know what any of the stuff is. That's a salad. We can see the anchovy stew, and we can see something else here. Whatever the hell this stuff is, they're eating really well. And also, that's not a Capri Sun for all of our American viewers. That's actually milk. Now see him looking over all of it again. And that's the end of the clip, but quite a buffet. Very nice to see. With that, we're now moving on into our next clip, where we also saw some Ukrainian helicopters firing at the Russians again today. Sing, women, sing for the year. So we can now see the Mi-17 turning around after firing all of its rockets. We can now see the second one turning around, firing off its flares. And with that, that's the end of the video, but absolutely great to see that the Ukrainian helicopters are still in flight and firing off their rockets. We're now moving on to the next clip where we saw a burning T-72B3. And like the name says, the T-72 be free. And this thing is burning, and listen to this beat. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, let's hear it. The copyright, boom. Dude, the copyright be hitting this video just like that explosion right there when we play that whole song.
Yes.
I'm telling you. Anyways, that's the end of that clip right there. We're now going to be moving on into our next one from the west of Avdiivka, where we saw that a Russian drone was shot down by a British stormer in the area of Avdiivka. We're going to have to mute it because now we hear the music from 1492. We now see the Starstreak firing. It's now traveling on its way towards the target, hits the drone, and takes it down. Very nice. All in one good go, and the drone will never fly again. call this thing Radio Shack because it may have had radio parts in it before, but it doesn't even exist. With that, that's the end of the video, but absolutely great to see that the British Stormer was able to shoot down another drone, and of course Radio Shack is gone, but never forgotten. We're now moving on to our next...
Actually making a comeback, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on a small level.
On a small level. Well, you know, I guess they'll have to radio that in, but for now, we'll keep on waiting. We're now moving into our next bit of news where we saw a unit was all but wiped out, and the Russians are whining and complaining that 168 guys has now been turned into nothing less than 20. So here's the video, and it's kind of sad, but we're only going to be showing the first minute and 30 seconds of it. Here are the current remnants of the Storm unit. 5th Brigade, 1st Corps, 8th Army. Head count was 161 people. Now it's down to the guys you only see in front of you on the screen, which is about 20 of them. I'm the unit commander. Name. Hello, name. I received a combat objective. Reach positions in Vodanye village. During the assault, it was discovered that we suck. I'm sorry. It was discovered that it was difficult to conduct an offensive in this section, as the enemy had adjusted fire at all points, meaning we suck. As a result, our command made a decision to send us towards enemy machine guns, mortars, and tanks. Very sad. We sat under open mortar fire and artillery for 14 days, otherwise known as a fortnight. We took huge losses, 34 people wounded, 22 dead. Boo-hoo. Our company commander was killed. We made a decision to reach the Army HQs, where we found that evacuation was being planned for us. Evacuation was started being planned by the Deputy Brigade Commander, Colonel Ivanov Ilya Vladimirovich, or whatever. He's trying to hide his faults in terms of giving criminal assault orders. They
Wait, pause the video for a second.
Yes.
This guy in the bottom left corner has got to shut that mouth and stop staring at the camera like Dopey off of Snow White with that Z beanie on his head.
Oh, man. Well, you know, Matthew, we don't want to get, like one of the people said in the comments section, Matthew, we don't want to get too fervent with the patriotism here. And I actually saw someone say this, Matthew. Someone said we shouldn't make fun of fat Russians because a lot of our viewers may look like that. And I was like, it's like, no, they don't. It's like, who the hell are you to say that? It's like, I saw that. Not like now that you made fun of that person, I was sitting there thinking, you know, I'm probably going to see a comment in the comment section saying, don't say that because a lot of the viewers look like that. It's like, no, they don't. That's a lie. Because we've seen, like, hell, we've gotten pictures in the mail of our viewers, and we've seen a lot of our viewers, you know, like pictures of them. None of them look like these people. They look intelligent and stuff. This guy down here looks like he's about to go to work in a diamond mine or something like that.
Man, he has held that look the entire video. He hasn't changed one bit.
Oh, man. But let's see. Real quick, we're going to let this thing keep running so that way the subtitles can get off his eyes. We get a full look at his face again. They placed blocking units behind us and weren't letting us go. Currently, we are not allowed to go anywhere at all. They threatened to destroy us one by one as unit commanders. He's still doing it. We are in grave danger. Dude, this guy is about to go hi, ho, hi, ho, hi, ho. We appeal to the Commander-in-Chief to help us in this difficult situation. He's not going to help you. My unit completed its objective. For 14 days, we held a 1-kilometer front line. Everyone else was coming in and simply running away. But we did it, guys. We did it. Guys, if you have something to add, do it. I worked in a diamond mine. But anyways, that's the end of that video right there. I can only show so much of it, but anyways, you can get the picture. They're being destroyed out there in the area of Vodanye, which is right there. Moving on to the next clip, we can see a stormer shooting down a drone. Actually, we've already seen that one. Sorry, that's a duplicate. We're now moving on to the next one where we saw a small mortar, a teeny-weeny mortar, firing at the Russians. This was fired off by the Atom unit in the area of the Donetsk region. And of course, as y'all all know, while it is a small mortar, size doesn't always count. Here's the video. But, you know, that song is absolutely garbage. I've got to tell you that. We can now see them firing off the small mortar. It's probably a 40mm. This is the one that you give your kids growing up, so that way they can learn how to operate a crew-served weapon. They're chopping in the rounds, emptying out the entire crate, as a matter of fact. And so with that, we now see them packing up and getting on the move. And that's the end of the clip. And very nice to see that they were able to fire off those mortars like that. We're now going to be moving on down into the Marinka area, where we saw that the 54th commander abandoned the front, according to his very own unit. Here's video.
Well, the servicemen of the recon company of the 54th Tank Regiment, please. After arriving to the SMO zone, we were attached to 267th Rifle Battalion, please. 1st Slavyansk Brigade, please. We appeal to society and to RF military command, please. At the moment, we're being to assault reinforced position, please. Without the support of artillery armored vehicles, are completing objectives in our direction, we saw with our own eyes poor organization of assault and defense, please, while being present on zero-line positions. For 15 days, we were unable to request suppression of enemy fire positions. We provided coordinates for suppression, but there was no response fire from our side. Although enemy artillery shelled our positions throughout all the period, always from the same location. Due to this, we took very heavy losses. Local DPR officers abandoned positions, and only the Russian mobilized were remaining. Evacuation of dead and wounded also was not organized. We did it ourselves, leaving positions without cover. There was no delivery of water, food, and ammo. We ate what we brought ourselves, also leaving positions for this. There were no comms between units, positions, and the command. Due to mentioned above, we asked the command to sort out the situation. No, denied. And also transfer us from DPR forces to the Russian Armed Forces units. It's not going any better up there. For the local command, we are cannon fodder sent for slaughter. We are living people and want to return to our families. You are not. Currently, we have here those who managed to escape. Others are not allowed to leave positions. And that's the end of the clip, but as you can see right there, the commanders of the DPR are once again abandoning the front lines again. We're now moving on into Marinka, where we saw an absolute hellhole occur. Y'all are about to watch a clip that's absolutely insane. Two squads, a Russian squad and a Ukrainian squad, are running for the exact same house at the exact same time, completely unaware of each other's presence. They're both going to run into this destroyed building, and once they get in there, chaos ensues. This was actually posted by a pro-Russian group, and it turns out that someone was able to translate it, and they actually posted a video of their own guys getting blasted. The Ukrainians apparently went into this house and they wiped the floor. So you're about to watch both of them enter at the exact same speed like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, and then you're about to watch the Ukrainians obliterate them, although you won't see that on film. But you can see the Russian squad, or at least parts of the Russian squad coming in here, the Ukrainian squad coming in over here on this side of the house where the mouse cursor is, and now that they're both in there, the fun begins, and the Ukrainians figure out that they're not alone as the last Russian starts filing into the house. We can now see that as time has lapsed, the firefight is still ongoing in this house, literally eye to eye. We can see grenades exploding inside of other rooms, and also small... maybe a grenade fell out of the house and blew up outside, can't really tell. But Matthew, this reminds me of one of those redneck shootouts, you know, where where Cletus and another guy runs into a trailer and they get at it. This kind of reminds me of that. You know, something that would happen down in the deep bayou. And you see some smoke coming out of the house, which is probably the Russians not really having a great time, probably eating the shrapnel. Delicious.
Best thing they've had in years.
Now, Matthew, we got to act super masculine now to make people believe that we really know what we're talking about.
I gotta say, I love eating shrapnel. Delicious.
That's little talk. I eat titanium for breakfast.
I tell you, I was a Navy SEAL and I went on 13 tours.
And we can see right here that
now Navy SEAL might be the only person that can actually act like that legitimately, but anybody else is just playing a game.
I don't know. I mean, you know, we've met people close to Navy SEALs. Well, I've met people that are kind of close to being a Navy SEAL, and they never really act like that. They're always pretty normal.
They're pretty humble, actually.
Yeah,
To be, actually tough.
Well, one rule that I found out is that the people who really act like they're too tough for everything never did anything, and the ones that sit there and like hold butterflies on their fingers were usually the ones that went and got stuff done. That's one thing I've learned talking to dozens of folks that were in the military, is that the really, really nice ones were the ones who were always a part of the craziest units doing the craziest things. But anyways, we're now going to be moving on from this clip after watching the Ukrainians wipe the floor from the outside trying to look in. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news outside of Marinka, where we saw a grad firing. When you see the Toyota grads, it's kind of like Toyota Thon, but instead of Thon, it's a grad. And there they go.
What kind of Toyota is that? An SUV?
I think it's a pickup truck with the back of the pickup truck removed.
Oh.
And with that, that's the end of the clip. And it's great to see the Toyota-thon is having a fun time. The Angry Penguin said, the 2023 Toyota grad. You know, that actually wouldn't be bad marketing, really, for Toyota, because I bet you Toyota already realizes that their vehicles are usually the ones that end up in the fields of war more than any other vehicle in history, even tanks, and, like, actually purpose-built military vehicles. So why not just lean into that, you know? But anyways, we're going to be moving
on. What if Toyota opened up like a military division that sold like specialized military trucks? That would be the best selling thing in the world.
They already have. It's called the Toyota Hilux.
Oh, that's somewhat.
The Toyota Hilux does the job already.
Look at that thing. It's kind of like a Navy SEAL, unassuming but deadly.
Here we go. The Toyota Hilux Technical, probably the most common fighting vehicle anywhere in the world. Oh yeah, that's from Top Gear.
Of course, Whistling Diesel. That's Whistling Diesel right there.
Oh really?
Of course, this video pops up. Yep.
Let's see here. What else do we got for the? Oh my God!
Oh hell no!
Oh hell! And they even painted the rocket pod red.
This looks like some kind of like Toyota Hilux like Chinese ripoff or something. Something doesn't look right about it.
Yeah, something doesn't look right. I think it may be a more modern year model, probably from like the 2000s. But yeah, something is a little weird about it, I'd say. So, anyways, we're moving on. What the hell?
Oh no! Please tell me that's not the new one.
That looks wrong. Very, very wrong. Something bad.
Oh no!
Here. Oh man. Anyways,
get it off the screen. Get it off.
Get it off the stage. Anyways, we're moving on out of Marinka and into Volodar, where we saw the 72nd hitting the Russians down here as well. 907 Pike, Alaska said, "Yes, officer, that's the one." Yeah, that is the one. We hear the drone taking off. We can see it flying away, and now the video is buffering, which tells me scary things are happening. There goes the drone.
Полетела бомба, блядь.
Bomba, блядь. Oh? I feel like that's copyrighted, although I hope it wasn't. I wish it wasn't, but it sounds like it's copyrighted. We can see the drone flying around. The camera is like a TV in the 1980s, very staticky, but we can see the tank right there that's going for, and I couldn't tell if that one hit. Let's see the distant footage, and according to the instant replay, it was hit on the track. But we can't really tell if it was stopped. It appears it may have been a grazing shot. You know, one that goes out to pasture and eats some grass. That's what a grazing shot is. We can see the next one coming in, flying over the fields quite erratically. But I guess if you had an RPG-7 stuck to the bottom of a drone, any drone would fly erratically. We can see it flying towards its target. Flying through the trees, finding its target, and running into it, although we couldn't really see that from there. We now see the next one flying in. James Moon said, "It missed. I swing, and I missed. And I swing again, and I missed. And I threw it into the kitchen, and I missed. And then I threw it again, and I missed. And that one looks like it may have missed, too. I gotta be honest with you, these things look like they're missing a little bit, and that's because they lose connection like 20 yards, 25 yards away from the target. Now you see one flying over a village. Call this one the village people, because it's about it's about to be wiping out the Russians in the village. So you now see it coming in. It looks like this one went out of control, however, and it looks like they actually recovered it there. They're now going for the little ant's nest here again and bringing it in, and the video ends before it even hits. So fortunately, we don't get to see if that one hits or not, but that's the end of the clip, and that's some of the kamikaze drones being used in the area of Mikilske. We're now moving on to the next one, where we also saw more FPV drones being used in the region of Mikilske. And funnily enough, that's actually a duplicate from Twitter, so we're going to be moving on from that. Oh yeah, Matthew, remember? I believe... Wait, isn't it... Wait, OSINT technical, is that the same as OSINT?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, you know, remember OSINT always has bad takes according to a random person out there. Is this the same OSINT?
Oh, no, this is a different guy. This is a different one.
Okay. Oh, by the way, we're not saying that OSINT has bad takes. That was actually someone else who said that, and we got a good laugh out of them saying that, because that's coming from someone who has no takes. But anyways, we're moving on into the next bit of news in Volodar, where we saw some POWs were taken today. And this is a 13-minute video. And we are actually over time on the news already. So if you want to watch this one, make sure to go to the description and the link below and go click on it and then go watch this, because it is quite a long video, but it's a very interesting one. I was able to watch the whole thing before the stream. We're now moving on to the area of Velika Novosilka, where we saw that the Ukrainians have been hunting down some Shaheds. We see this guy's got the painted AK. Russia has been using Iranian-made Shahed drones to attack Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers are using rifles to target them. They need to use shotguns. When the first drones were launched last year, we didn't know how to fight them.
Невідомо, як саме правильно діяти, як
But after some practice and training, we started downing them.
Тому подібне. Але потім згодом, коли вже почали практикувати, почали тренуватись, почали збивати, вже сприйняття.
Denny's recently shot down a drone using his rifle. Good job to Denny's. Now see them firing into the night. Yeah, that was me! Look, guys! The one flew up in the distance.
Стріляли на випередження.
We had to lead the drone when shooting. With a leash, preferably. With the help of lasers, our spotters indicated the direction and altitude of the target.
Також висоту. Ми вже по траєкторії.
And we were already positioning along that trajectory and leading the
по
drone.
траєкторії орієнтувались і стріляли на випередження. На висоті приблизно
It was flying about 150 meters above us.
Летів перед нами. Дальність.
The range was about 200 meters-ish. Downed drones are examined by Ukrainian specialists.
Как выглядит дрон
This is what a Shahed kamikaze drone
можно
looks
сейчас
like.
увидеть вблизи.
This is a Shahed 131. Over here is a Shahed 136.
Их сбили.
They were downed in
Didn't we see
different
this yesterday?
Сейчас
we saw pictures of it, but we didn't see a video of it.
Huh.
Despite sanctions, Iran has been using Western tech to build these weapons, and this is where the pictures came in. Most of the parts were imported from Japan, China, and the United States. Now, we did see this part. We didn't see the first part, but we did see this part. Now we did. So we're going to be ending this video here, but you can see how they're shooting down the Shaheds in the war. We're now going to be moving on, after I lost my words there for a second, to the area of Khilipol, which for some reason always reminds me of Kuhwip, where we can see that this dropped harder than an album from insert any kind of artist. Except for Kanye, because Kanye, no one can talk about Kanye anymore. So anyways, we can see them dropping the bomblets onto the Russians. And we can see it explode, and it looks like the Russian got out of the dugout right at the wrong time.
Oblast.
We now see another bomblet dropping. This one making its way on down, and oh, drop to your knees and give me a 50. And we can now see an F1 grenade being dropped, and it is right in the hole. Someone call up Tiger Woods. This is a hole-in-one. That was absolutely incredible. I gotta say, that was phenomenal. Believe me, I haven't seen anything like that often recently. So with that, that's the end of the clip. We're now going to be moving out of Wheelapole and moving further on down the line, passing this little bit of news, and moving on into the area where we saw the Ukrainians ready to launch a drone. We can see a man here working in the Ukrainian army with his drone, ready to launch it, but he's just waiting for the order to be able to fire it. We're now going to be moving on from that news and on up to Kyiv, because believe it or not, we were actually able to cover 2 full 48-hour days in an hour and 50 minutes, which was actually really impressive. So we're now going to be going to the president of Ukraine's website right here, where I get the speech every single night, and we're going to be listening to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 295 of the war. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Майже завершився ще один тиждень оборони, ще один тиждень, коли Україна стала міцніше, коли ворог став ще більш ізольованим, ще більш безнадійним. Маємо за цей тиждень рішення про нові пакети оборонної підтримки від Сполучених Штатів, Литви, Фінляндії, Німеччини. Шведський парламент затвердив вже 11-й пакет оборонної підтримки України. Є безпековий пакет, є в цілому сильні домовленості з Японією. Ще раз хочу подякувати прем'єр-міністру Кішині за продуктивний візит. Отримали 1,5 мільярда євро макрофіну від ЄС. Кошти вже на рахунках Національного банку. Уряд Хорватії прийняв програму щодо лікування і реабілітації наших поранених воїнів. Греція приєдналась до групи партнерів, що працюють над створенням спецтрибуналу. Рухаємось і в захисті історичної справедливості для українців. Ісландія визнала голодомор геноциду українського народу. Крок за кроком робимо все можливе і всюди, щоб російський реваншизм програв кожному із елементів своєї агресії проти України та свободи народів загалом. Росія має програти на полі бою в економіці, міжнародних відносин, в своїх намаганнях підмінити історичну правду якимись своїми там імперськими міфами. Кремль програє в своїх намаганнях духовно поневолити наших людей. І саме повномасштабний програш Росії буде надійною гарантією від нових агресій та криз. Хочу ще раз привітати сьогодні Службу безпеки України, усіх співробітників, співробітниць СБУ із вашим професійним днем. Усіх, хто зараз в бою, на постах, в оперативній, агентурній, слідчій роботі, кожного і кожного в СБУ, хто разом з усіма силами нашої держави наближає українську перемогу і захищає наших людей. На тижні завершилось навчання наших офіцерів Національної гвардії, військово-морських сил, нашої армії, від Харкова до Вінниччини, Львівщини, від Києва до Одеси, Національна академія Нацгвардії, Київський інститут Нацгвардії, Одеська морська академія, ще Національна академія сухопутних військ завершила спеціальний курс підготовки молодших лейтенантів. Я дякую всьому викладацькому складу наших оборонних навчальних закладів, усім батькам дякую, наставникам нових українських офіцерів. Вірю, що цьогорічний випуск примножить славу України і посилить усіх нас, всю державу. На тижні були ухвалені кілька важливих рішень нашого уряду, зокрема відзначую рішення, яке активізує виробництво безпілотників. Загалом цього року, як мінімум 20 мільярдів гривень буде спрямовано на закупівлю дронів для наших воїнів. І це не межа. Є нові рішення щодо відбудови. Спектр потреб широкий. Всюди, де був цього тижня у відрядженнях, запити вимагають значних ресурсів. Ми знайдемо ці ресурси. Херсонщина, Харківщина, Донеччина, кожен інший регіон, який постраждав від бойових дій, усі повернуться до нормального життя. Окремо відзначу співпрацю з Міжнародним кримінальним судом. Цей тиждень дав Україні угоду про відкриття Офісу прокурора Міжнародного кримінального суду, як на рівні нашої національної юстиції, так і на міжнародному рівні. Робимо все, щоб російські воєнні злочинці відповіли буквально за кожен удар по Україні, по наших людях. Звичайно, дякую кожному нашому воїну, усім, хто зараз в бою, усім, хто захищає наші позиції, захищає наш кордон, за те, що Україна міцно проходить і цей тиждень від Бахмуту до Херсонщини, від Авдіївки до Харківщини. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто б'ється з ворогом, хто рятує наших бійців після поранень, хто тренує наших воїнів, хто постачає для української оборони все необхідне. Коли кожен день дає нашій державі результат, кожен такий день робить війну коротше, а нашу перемогу ближчою. Дякую всім, хто посилює нашу Україну. Слава усім, хто б'ється за свободу для України. Слава Україні!
Well, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 395. Let me change that real quick. That's been going the whole stream. But on day 395 of the news of the war in Ukraine, and of course, I thank you all so much for watching this news segment. I'm terribly sorry. Once again, I would like to apologize to everyone for the internet issues we had a little bit earlier on tonight, and the internet issues we've been having for the past several days. It seems as though it's been a mix of, one, last night, the Spectrum, which is our internet provider, just straight up died on us. So that happened. And then the day before that, it seemed that we were being DDoS attacked. So we've been having a little bit of a litany of everything this week. Terribly sorry about all of that, but I'm more than happy to know that everyone in the Lee Spring Army has stuck it through with us and was here tonight for this night's news. And so thank you all so much once again for watching. We'll be moving on into our question segment here in a second, which is a completely separate segment of the stream. You can watch either the news and get off, or you can watch the question segment and get off, and they may as well be two totally separate things. But thank you so much once again, everyone, for watching the news. And we're now moving on into the question segment. Before we get to those questions, we have to get to all of those polls, because those polls may as well be Mad Dog 2020, because they are straight up juice, and sometimes they give the viewers headaches. So with that, what we got?
All right, so for our polls, for our last question segment of the stream, now let me grab something here. There we go. All right, so the first poll says, reports say that the U.S. military supply chain is not ready for a war with China. And what are your thoughts? 56% said the USA has become complacent. We need to fix it. 8% said unsure. And 15% said, it's a problem, but not too bad. And 22% said it's an exaggeration and not true. And on this one, I have to say that I think it is a problem, but not quite as bad as it's being made out to be. Every country is going to get complacent in times of peace. It's just a given. We do spend the most of any military on the planet, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have everything perfectly under control. So always some room for improvement. So I'm with the 15%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I say we need to back that up with numbers. How many anti-ship missiles does the U.S. have? Anti-ship missiles. Does the
and also, just to clarify before you look it up, it's a problem with production and manufacturing and not necessarily our current supply.
Yes, but one thing that's always important to remember is that and where did that come from, if you don't mind me asking? Who said that?
I can't recall, but I saw it from two different places.
Mr. Senator, are you doing the I can't recall on me? I'm just playing with you, but one thing that is a bit of a misnomer sometimes is that the U.S. doesn't have enough A, B, or C to fight a war with such and such person. And that is a bit of a misnomer. Because no country in the history of the world, starting off in a war, has ever had a large enough ammunition stockpile or weapon stockpile to go into a war and fight it without having to produce anything extra. That's why throughout every single war, there's been mobilization of a nation's economy and a nation's industry to be able to fight that war. So it doesn't really matter if we have the enough ammunition right now to take on the Chinese for, say, 5 years. It matters if we have enough ammunition right now to take on a sizable portion of the Chinese military until the nation's economy and industry can be mobilized for war. So it's something that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because yesterday, there was a conversation the other day that Matthew and me fundamentally disagreed on, and that was whether China was a threat to the United States or not. And I argued, and I'll let Matthew say a synopsis of his argument, but I argued that the Chinese are not a military threat, but they're a diplomatic threat on the world stage to the United States and pose a risk in that regard. In several decades, they would be a military threat, but right now, they're not one at all. And Matthew, what was your take on that argument?
And my take was, I think China is a threat militarily, economically, and diplomatically, basically on all fronts. And they're directly competing with us for the top spot in the world, basically.
And so those were the two
I guess you could say, points that were had yesterday when we were having that discussion. And after the stream went off air and the next day, we were actually talking about the size of the Chinese Navy and the U.S. Navy. Because one thing that is always overlooked in a war with China and the United States is that it would not be a ground war starting off. But the largest part of the initial phase of that war would be fought in between the U.S. Navy and the Chinese Navy in the South China Sea or in the greater Pacific Ocean. That's where most of that war would be fought at the very start of it. So the question was, would the Chinese Navy stand up to the United States Navy? And so if you type that in, can the U.S. Navy win a war against China? There was this stupid take. There was a stupid take here from CNN, and I've never heard anything this stupid before. Bigger fleet almost always wins. And so they said that the Chinese had a fleet of something around 350 ships. We have around 270 ships. And for that reason alone, just because they had more ships, they would win. Now, you know where I heard this argument before? I heard this argument with Russia. They have 12,000 tanks. The United States has 6,000 of them. Therefore, they would win. Never went over the quality, the quantity, like the quality of the quantity. They just went over the quantity, and the quantity just wins. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because that completely nulls the aircraft carriers per country right here. And I'll show you all this. Aircraft carriers by countries. Do we have an infographic for this? Because I was trying to find one yesterday. All right, so here we go. The United States, right now, at this very moment, has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 aircraft carriers in service, while China only has 1. And there's a second one right now that is fitting out, but it's not going to be in service until, I think, the next year. So that was the stupidest take I've ever heard, because just by the U.S. Navy's air arm alone, we would blow away most of the Chinese Navy before they ever even got close to the surface fleet. The other thing is that the Chinese Navy, the People's Liberation Army Navy, also known as the PLAN or PLAN, let me see, China, let me put that in. There we go. The People's Liberation Army Navy has 350 ships, yes, but 107 of these are like anti-ship missile boats. They're not even ships, they're boats. And let me try and get down here to the list of ships, and let me try and find that. Let's see, ships and submarines. Here we go. And we'll go down here. So they have some submarines. These are all of the submarines that they have that are the ballistic missile type. They're all Type 94s, which are kind of a license-built version of a Russian class, Soviet class of submarine. I forgot what the name of it was. And then you move on further down, and they have a ballistic missile submarine. Only one, the Type 32. They have some more submarines. But what I'm talking about, and of course they have a massive amount of submarines, which is very interesting. But what I'm talking about is the surface fleet. And the surface fleet, which is what they were talking about in the size of the Chinese Navy, was just surface ships alone, comparing that to the United States. If you look at them, they have Type 55 destroyers, and I'll show you all a picture of these right here. You can see this right here. And when you compare these in the quality of a U.S. ship, they have half the firepower per ship. And while they do have larger numbers overall, they actually have a smaller number of, say, and we'll call destroyers for this discussion a capital ship. They have a smaller number of capital ships than the U.S. does. Most of the number of their ships comes from their missile boats. And I'll go back to those and I'll try and find them for y'all real quick. So let me go down here. Here's their frigates. Here's a look at one of their frigates. This is kind of comparable to an Oliver Hazard Perry in terms of what role it's supposed to be filling in the Chinese Navy, although we don't really have any Oliver Hazard Perrys in service anymore. So let me move even further on down to the corvettes, and I believe these, nope, that's not the one we're looking for yet. Type 56A, not that one either. Let me scroll on down a little bit more. The coastal warfare vessels, I think these are the ones we're actually looking for right here. Ones like these. These actually make up a somewhat significant number of the Chinese Navy's surface ships that make up the numbers in their Navy. And this thing, it can't compare to an American ship. And on top of that, with 10 aircraft carriers at any given moment active in the Pacific, will these things even stand a chance? An entire air wing could be sent out to take on one of these things, fire off 4 anti-ship missiles, and boom, you've lost probably 2 of these corvettes, and they never even engaged the U.S. Navy, ever. And so
this was the dumbest take I've ever seen from CNN. Well, it's not the dumbest take I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of stupid takes over the course of this war, but this is the dumbest take I've ever seen with anything considering the military. And that's why when people say, oh, you know, the Chinese, and I'm not like dissing on Matthew or anything, but when people say, as a serious note, the Chinese are a force to be reckoned with, and then they take an argument like this, that they just have more ships, therefore they'll win, as the way they...
Well, I don't agree with that assessment that if they have more ships, they'll simply win. I think they're on level playing field with us because what they've done is their strategy is to diversify their missiles across many ships instead of just a few. The U.S. is putting a lot more missiles on less ships. So the benefit to China is you have to take out a lot more boats at the same time as they can flood you with more boats to try to take on one of our boats with many more missiles on it. So I think between the two strategies, they kind of cancel each other out, and it ends up being somewhat equal.
But I mean, you've always got to put into play that it's not just about the missiles on a ship; it's about the missiles on aircraft. And considering a single American aircraft carrier carries 70 aircraft, and there would be 10 of them most likely, well, more like realistically 8 of them or 7 of them involved in this war at any given moment. You always have to remember that there's going to be hundreds of U.S. Navy aircraft flying around out there as well. That would be multiplying the firepower that we could give at any single engagement with the Chinese Navy at sea.
True, true. But I wonder how many of those aircraft carriers could we have concentrated in one area to be able to take on the Chinese? Because I don't think we can divert every single one of them to go fight in China.
Realistically, keeping several of them back in the United States for refit, because some of them probably would be undergoing refit, and then also including maybe 2 carrier task groups that would be elsewhere in the world, you could probably have about 7 aircraft carrier task groups fighting China in that war.
Maybe
and
so,
that's at
maybe
the
so.
most. That's at the most. The minimum would be somewhere probably around 5 or 6.
Maybe so, maybe so. You know, one thing I've wondered about, and because I'm not really very familiar with the Navy as a branch, our Navy, the American Navy, how does the training compare? This might be too big of a rabbit hole to go down right now, but how does the training compare between China's Navy and our Navy?
That's a good question, considering that the U.S. Navy has a lot of recent combat experience over the previous few decades, and the People's Liberation Army Navy has never had any real practical naval experience. Like the Chinese have never gotten engaged in a war with anyone that ever involved their navy being used in scale. That would probably have a lot in play with how much training they have and how practical it really is, because U.S. naval doctrine revolves around realistic circumstances in the modern day over about the past 3 decades. China has nothing of that to work on. They work entirely off of theory.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see, like, in a kind of morbid sense. I really do not want to see a war break out between the U.S. and China, but I have a feeling it'll be on pretty much equal footing to an extent. China has its strong points, and we also have our strong points, but we also have crucial weaknesses on both sides.
And that's true. And getting back to that poll, speaking of which, and it's about the Chinese. What was the poll prompt again? I want to make sure I hear it exactly instead of butchering it here.
It was reports say that the U.S. military supply chain is not ready for a war with China.
So getting back to everything at the start, you have to remember that these are the amounts of aircraft carriers that we have going into the war with China. As soon as it starts, they have 1 versus 7, and while their surface fleet's bigger, bigger isn't a larger number isn't always better, because Russia proved that with the amount of tanks they had, and look how good that did them. And it really just matters how long of a supply do we have until we run out of stuff, and the war industry should have kicked in supplying the military by that point. That's really the question, and then that goes into how much manufacturing industry is in the United States versus China that we could convert into producing weapons of war. And really, honestly, in that regard, the Chinese probably could outdo us in the manufacturing industry side of things, but then it becomes a matter of spending. Do they have enough spending that they could divert to then outspend the United States, or would the United States start outsourcing its production to other countries, maybe in the Balkans, or maybe even in Mexico or other countries that would produce the weapons and then bring them to the United States?
And another thing that I just thought about as well is the U.S. definitely, I can say with a absolute fact, we have better quality in all of our military equipment than China by far. China copies pretty much everything we have, and it's of lesser quality in China. But the catch is, though, they can manufacture a lot faster than we can, like we were just saying a minute ago. So even though ours is better quality, if it gets destroyed or damaged, China can replace that ship a lot faster, which basically means they have a lot less downtime in a battle, which is crucial to win a war.
But we also have to remember this: if the United States got involved in a war with China and it actually boiled over into a real conflict, I would take a shot that probably the rest of NATO would join in on that conflict, or at least the British.
I would say so. You're saying between the U.S. and China that NATO would jump in?
Yeah, I have a feeling that NATO would, well, at least Britain.
I think they'd have to.
I would say at least the British would, because the British followed us into Iraq twice in large numbers. I would say the British at least would. NATO would probably follow. So then you have to include the French Navy that also has an additional aircraft carrier and its own surface fleet, and the British. And then you would, the Germans don't really count. It's really just the French and the British that have any kind of naval power in NATO. So you have to add in the French and British naval numbers. That's an additional 3 aircraft carriers they would be adding in, along with their own surface fleets. So then at that point, the Western forces, in terms of naval power, would actually outnumber the Chinese. But then it's a question of, would we be able to get a war industry running to supply that bulk for longer than the Chinese could? And could we also outspend them? So then that would be the question.
Indeed.
So,
this is the conversation. I can have a conversation about China and the United States all day long. This is more of my area of what I've studied in the past. I know a little bit about Russia now because of the stream and the Enforcer, what he knows, but I know a lot more about China and the U.S. relations.
And so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. That's probably got to be the biggest rabbit hole we've ever gone down for a poll. And with that, we are on to the next. We're going to have to make these next ones quick, though, because we went over that one so long. We're probably going to start running overtime, believe it or not.
All right, so our next poll says legal experts say it's crucial to allow for due process before Russian assets are forfeited. And what are your thoughts? 48% said yes, we must have due process. 34% said no, Russia doesn't need it. And 9% said unsure, and 8% said it depends on how the war ends. And on this one, I have to say that my instincts say that we cannot ignore the rule of law simply because it's inconvenient at the moment, because that sets a very bad precedent. And I cannot allow my emotions to get in the way of the rule of law. We have to uphold that, or otherwise we're giving in and sort of stooping down to the level Russia has stooped down to. So I would say follow due process, but I think ultimately it will be decided in Ukraine's favor. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say due process, like you said, has to be followed because it's just an American right. It's one of the amendments in the Constitution. But I would say, I don't know, because, for example, with the 1903, which was a rifle that we used before World War I, when we entered World War I, we immediately suspended the payments to the Mauser company for ripping off their patent. And we didn't even have due process for that. It was just already decided we weren't paying them, so that was the end of the story. Considering that we're not involved in an actual war with Russia, it is a little different. So I feel like they kind of are owed due process because it's just an American... it's an American thing to do. So I'm also going to have to lean on the side of due process would be needed, because if we didn't conduct any kind of due process on this, we would almost be like the Russians, just going around doing whatever the hell we wanted. So with that, I hope we address that poll fairly well.
Yeah. And even if we follow due process, like with the overwhelming evidence of what Russia has done, I don't see any way in hell that it would be decided in Russia's favor.
Yeah, And some people are saying they don't deserve due process. We even gave due process to the Germans at the end of World War II, and pure war criminals. We didn't have them immediately executed. We at least gave them a trial, and a few of them, although most of them ended up getting hanged, a few of them actually ended up surviving the trial, and they were found to not be guilty. So I would say that it's a Western right, and we can't go back down into tribalism all the way to the point that we don't even give due process to things like this. So with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the third poll says, is a major conflict likely to kick off between the U.S. and Iran very soon? 34% said no, conflict is unlikely. 31% said yes, conflict seems very likely. 12% said unsure, and 22% are on the fence. And on this one, I am going to say I'm on the fence as well. I think maybe so, but it's a little too early to tell because this recent events of them attacking and I believe killing a contractor and injuring some U.S. service members just happened within the last 72 hours, and not enough information has come in to make a determination yet. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that a conflict with Iran is something that's kind of questionable because they've done this before several years ago, if anyone recalls. Because for some reason, public memory is very short when it comes to these things. Like this happened a few years ago. Some missiles landed near an American air base in Syria, and then also earlier on in the war, a Iranian missile landed in the U.S. consulate in Erbil in Iraq, and then everyone just forgot about that. So a lot of people are entering this again, like it's the first time this has happened over the course of a year and a half. It hasn't led to war yet when these things have happened. However, considering the situation that we are dealing with the Iranians, I would say that it would most likely be beneficial to escalate this into either a very tense diplomatic play or even a war. And it sounds kind of a little questionable to say a war, considering that the Iranians may be on the cusp of a nuclear breakthrough. It would probably be a little bit more beneficial to get in there and end that before it happens. But then that's a little tough because whenever we've done that before in the Middle East, we've ended up destabilizing entire countries for decades and then getting stuck there. So if we did something like that, we would probably have to keep the current government that's there in existence at the end of the war, just with heavy changes to it, but keeping a similar structure to what it is now, and then let it corrode itself from the inside. Unlike what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is we went in, we overthrew the government, and then we just made an entirely brand new one, and it doesn't even fit in with the culture that exists there, and so then it immediately goes into conflict, and nothing ever fixes itself. We've got to allow the Iranians, if we did something like that, to kind of form their own government after the war, but make sure that the Iranian public has the means to do that, but we don't directly get involved in the entire process and just rebuild the thing from the ground up without any of their involvement. So with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well. Activista said, let Israel do it. I got to tell you, I think it'd be a really hard time for Israel to get to Iran. I mean, that's a long walk, and you got to go through 2 different countries to get there. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, reports estimate that Iran is less than 6 months away from a nuclear weapon breakthrough. And what are your thoughts? 47% said the U.S. must intervene to stop it. 17% said unsure. 26% said step in only if verified. And 10% said Iran can have nukes if it wants it. Now, one thing, a piece of news that came out a little while ago that most people will probably have forgotten about by now is 2 tons of uranium went missing from a site in Libya, and Iran has been working on this nuclear weapon breakthrough for a little while now. And I have a strong suspicion it might have gone to Iran. And we also have to recognize the potential that these strikes that are suddenly happening and getting news coverage on U.S. bases in Syria. And please take this with a grain of salt when I say it. It could possibly be a false flag attack by the U.S. because there is some need to have the U.S. step in and intervene before Iran does get a nuke, in my opinion. I don't think they should be a nuclear power. That's very dangerous. It's a very unstable regime there right now. So I'm going to be with the 47%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to be with the 47% that say that we should most likely intervene if that information is true. Having another country with nuclear weapons only creates a more difficult situation on the world stage. Not only that, if we somehow secure American interest in Ukraine by kicking the Black Sea Fleet out of Crimea, if the Iranians get weapons, then it's all for, nuclear weapons, then it was all for nothing, because then they're the ones that'll be able to pull off the diplomatic plays in the Middle East, and if they become friendly with the Chinese, we may as well sign off all of the Middle East to China. So,
I would say get involved if we can verify that that's true. But then again, that's really hard to do because the last time we tried to verify if information was true about people having uranium, someone sat in a hotel in Baghdad for 2 weeks and then came back and told Congress there was uranium in that country. And then we invaded and found out there wasn't any at all. So, and also, Jet Fusion said you cannot do anything with just uranium ore. That's true, but we already know that they have facilities in Iran due to some diplomatic agreements made a while ago that can enrich uranium for nuclear energy usage. So it wouldn't be that much of a stretch to say they would further refine that uranium, not just for energy usage, but for weapon usage as well. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And I have to say, Psyops, you do have a point here. He says, I don't agree with you on this one. False flags are insane. But this is speculation on my part. I want to make that clear. The false flag thing is purely my opinion and speculation. It may or may not be what's happening or not, but it would not be the first time the U.S. has done a false flag to go in and invade a country. For example, the weapons of mass destruction situation, that was a similar false flag incident. And the U.S. has to worry about selling a war to the American people. So if we need to go in and prevent Iran from developing a nuke fully where they can use it, we'll need to come up with some legitimate means to go in and do it without just saying we're going to invade because we don't want them to have nukes. So that's my position on it. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in before we move on to the next one?
Yes, I fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Look, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. We invaded Iraq with the premise of removing weapons of mass destruction from their hands, so we could justify the war with Iran on the exact same premise. It's just that it doesn't have that good of a look, considering how wrong we were in Iraq to do it again in Iran, and that's the thing that makes me think, what if, because to say it in the best way, it was a dreadful scandal back in the day when it was found out that the Iraqis did not have any uranium whatsoever, although we had been told they had. It would be about the same kind of dreadful scandal if we invaded Iran and then we found out they had no uranium or any way to actually produce a weapon. But then again, at the same time, the real question is, will we rather risk invading them and them not having uranium, or would we rather not invade them and then they do have uranium and then they create a nuclear weapon? That's really the question we have to decide at the end of the day. And of course, as all of y'all know, at the end of the day, it's night. So with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last poll before we get to our super chat and live chat questions says the Indian Air Force says that Russia has broken its agreement to deliver weapons to them. And what are your thoughts? 85%, the overwhelming majority said, was India really expecting that? LOL. 5% said unsure, 3% said I'm somewhat surprised, and 7% said I'm totally twisted and befuddled. I hope y'all appreciated the wording on that last one. But I have to say, I'm really confused if India was actually expecting to receive weapons from Russia. Surely they weren't, considering what's going on over there right now. They literally are running out of weapons. So if India was expecting that, that was a little bit crazy on their part. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that's not really that crazy, considering how the world's diplomatic situation is starting to change and India is starting to come further into the Western sphere. It wouldn't be that crazy to say the Russians would eventually stop selling weapons to them, considering they're seeing that change as well. So I'd say it's not that crazy, and I would have to agree with the 85%. And so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and we're now moving into our super chat questions. And up first, we have a $90 donation from none other than Mark, Slava Ukraine. He says, by the way, when you're having problems over the last 2 days, I heard Andrew and saw the video perfectly, but Matt was a mess. Sorry, Matt. And Mark threw me under the bus. He did it. But thank you very much for the support, Mark.
Well, I got to thank you so much for the kind words, Mark. And yes, Matthew's always the problem. I'm just kidding. Matthew does a great job over there. Now, one thing I've got to say is that I do a good amount of work making the news happen before the stream. My amount of work per day is longer, but it's less intensity. Matthew's is shorter, but it's higher intensity, and so he has to do a lot of work on the stream. And sadly, that call connection is something that neither of us can actually control at all. If he comes through badly, it's the internet, or that we're having some kind of an attack or something. But
I do have to say Matthew does a fantastic job, and not only that, he does a fantastic job on that Twitter. Have y'all peeped the Twitter lately?
Plug the Twitter.
Yeah, I like
Peep
whenever I tell Matthew he's doing a good job, I always have to go and peep that Twitter. And oh my golly, Matthew!
Oh
we got
wow,
4,
we have gained a lot.
Wow, man, that's a lot right there. I mean, call them out, call them out.
Oh, look at that first post right there.
Oh, look at that.
Call them out. Call them out.
Let's read that one out. I'm sure you've all heard that some frauds were outed today. Please remember, folks, being wary of donating to personal PayPal accounts that promise to support Ukraine. It's safer to donate directly to charities with an established track record. Call them out. Call them out. And
but seriously though, like a legit point in that, like always be careful and leery of PayPal accounts and people soliciting donations for Ukraine through that. Because my question is, why not conduct a fundraiser through, for example, YouTube Give, where the money goes directly to the charity instead of having to switch hands behind the scene where there's really not much accountability going on.
And that's what I've been saying for an incredibly long time, and that's why we've never run a fundraiser out of YouTube Give, is because there's a lot of questionability going on there that's involved with me personally taking y'all's money and then saying I'm going to go do something with it. And I never want y'all to have to ask that question of what's happening to that money. And then on top of that, it seems as though, and I have to say seems, of course, as we say, allegedly, it seems as though someone has been ousted out there for being not so honest with the people who have been following them. They've actually been recommended to be on the show before as a guest. They never have, and we don't know if the allegations are true or not yet, but it seems as though that it's starting to get a decent amount of traction. So that's why that PSA was put out today. And of course, that doesn't just apply to that one particular instance. We're not doing that as a feel-good. We're saying that because you should always be vigilant and making sure that the people you are sending your support to, your donations to, are actually doing what you asked for. You know, because there's some people out there who say that they will take in support to help out the Ukrainian military, and then when you ask them if they'll help the Ukrainian military, they tell you outright no. That's happened to us before, believe it or not, but we're going to try and keep that a little bit quiet, and, you know, because we're not trying to start any beefs or anything, but, you know, y'all can fill in the dots. So always be wary out there. One thing I always say is go to the link in our description below. It sends you directly to United 24, which the money goes directly to the Ukrainian government. Probably one of the best ways to do it. Or the other best way to do it is to hang out for tomorrow, which is Sunday on this channel, and support a Sunday fundraiser through YouTube Give, where all of the accounting is verified and approved by YouTube, and there is a great assurance and safekeeping of your donations to the actual nonprofits that are doing the help and the good over there in Ukraine. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Make sure to go and join the Twitter. Also, what do you got, Matthew?
Also, look, peep that post right below that one, by the way.
Oh,
it's the clown on Alabama, but look at this.
Is that a coup?
I'm not really sure what the weapon is, but this is a Redstone Arsenal.
I gotta tell you, that's nice. I like that. We just have Russian antiques in front of our buildings, but in Russia that's called a modern day weapon. But with that, we are on.
Did y'all know that we sent Russian weapons that we captured on the battlefield to Huntsville, Alabama, to Redstone Arsenal? I didn't know that until today, to be honest.
I actually kind of did a little, but hell, we send them everywhere. I mean, like, we send them to, like, testing sites to get shot at. We send them to, you know, places to analyze the equipment. I mean, like, we send those things everywhere across the United States, and I wouldn't doubt that they'd end up at Redstone, because Redstone, you know, designed the HIMARS. So if they designed the HIMARS, I would assume they'd also do other kinds of testing and analysis on the other stuff. Maybe that's why the security is so high at Redstone Arsenal, is because there's so much happening there in terms of development, testing, and research that you just can't get close, you know, at all.
Yeah, we got screwed over when we accidentally took the wrong turn and went to the gate. They held us there for, what was it, an hour until they let us go?
Yes, it was a whole hour.
It was ridiculous, but I understand why they have high security, but it was an honest mistake. Like, we took a wrong turn and ended up at the gate and just needed to turn around. They made us, like, stay there for an hour.
You know, I wonder if we did that again accidentally. Would they sit there and go, "Oh, it's the enforcer. Oh, hello there," and then let us go?
Oh,
you know, hopefully they would.
Oh, they'd be like, "Oh, we're going to give you special attention."
They're going to give us a special tour straight to the detention center in the middle of the base. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next
before we do though, thank you so much once again, Mark, for the huge amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. And then with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to AJ, who put in a $40 donation. Did we ever call that one out? The one about the whole Falcon?
Yeah, I think we did. It's like the whole
I think
Falcon
we did.
or something else.
Yeah, the platypus divisions of the LSA.
Yeah, we already addressed that one.
Yeah, I could have sworn we did. But anyways, thank you again, AJ, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Siba, who says, will Russia move the Black Sea Fleet and Slava Ukraine?
Russia probably will not move the Black Sea Fleet until it needs to be moved. There's no real port infrastructure in the Black Sea that can support the Black Sea Fleet, except for Sevastopol. A lot of people like to point to Novorossiysk and say that it can support the Black Sea Fleet. It can't. There's just not enough port facilities there to do that. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Psyops, our moderator, who says, let's see here. Psyops always sending in these super chats. Let me send this over to the enforcer for review.
And so I would put these up on the main screen. I was about to, but let me go to my phone and look at them here. Let's see here. Oh, man. Andy, I'm so glad I did not open this up, because I just noticed you sent me a link to that video thing, that we were... but anyways...
It's innocent. It's innocent. I mean, it sounded bad.
Well, I would love to read this one off from Psyops, but sadly, I don't think we can, because it does look a little... It looks a little sussy. Bum 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 bum. You know what I'm talking about, Matthew?
Oh yeah. Call them out.
Call them out. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. You've been a long time channel viewer, an old guard, and not only that, you're a pretty funny fella. Sadly, we can't read that one off though, so I guess we're sending that one to the live chat.
All right, so the one sponsored by Psyops goes to, let's see here, looks like Loren Notsky, who says, do you guys think if there will be any special weapons used once the offensive starts that we may not know about going to Ukraine?
Maybe a few. I'm feeling like they're not going to be massively secret weapons. It's not like the Ukrainians are out, going to pull F-16s out of the ether. But they probably will have a couple of armored cars and other kinds of vehicles we had never heard about. For example, the Ukrainians at some point got Israeli armored cars, although we never heard about that official delivery, and that was during the Kherson counteroffensive. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Red Lamani, who puts in a $20 donation and says, LSA chef here. We're doing a Ukrainian night here at my restaurant on the coming Tuesday, donating all the proceedings, and everyone is invited.
Hey, well, I thank you so much for the support and the offer to eat. I love eating. Matthew loves eating too. Hell, I think everyone loves eating, because if you don't like eating, you starve and you die. But I got to thank you so much for the support and an offer to come and eat. We would love to. And if we were nearby, we would. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and the kind offer. My mom actually got hooked on pierogies thanks to a super chat from one of y'all who said we ought to try a pierogi. We actually went and got some from the store, and they are pretty good. We actually have made them a little bit of a common sight in our meals because they're good and they're that good. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for the offer as well, and I would love to take you up on it if I could. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next, hold on, let's see here. Why is this not pasting? Let's see. Let me do something real quick and see if I can get this to...
Matthew lining up the Russians. Well, why are they not pasting?
All right, so there we go. That wasn't pasted for a minute. But yes, TTC MZX, I did change your super chat, so no worries there. I just was trying to paste that, but it wouldn't work, so it's done now, thankfully. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from BC Skyman, as well as another 20 from BC Skyman. The first one didn't have a comment, but the second one does. And BC says, Turkish coffee money, my enforcers. I went back and watched old streams from the beginning. An amazing job you guys have done, and keep it up.
And thank you so much, BC Skyman, for the support, and also the supports of the Turkish coffee. I don't know how much does it cost for the Turkish coffee things. The hammered copper Turkish coffee pot. That is, what the hell is that? A tongue twister or something?
Hammered copper Turkish coffee pot?
Yeah, see, you had to stop and slow down to do that too. Like, that is a tongue twister right there. $24.93, but for the whole thing, the Sudam Lassi Bazaar, the Turkish sand coffee, copper sand brewer machine, Turkish coffee machine, coffee on sand, restaurant, hotel, coffee shops, sand coffee maker, sand coffee machine is $425. That is a very expensive coffee machine, and honestly, rather than the neat looking like copper exterior look to this thing looks like, on the top of it, something you would find at a buffet, you know, like with that like silver top to it.
Well, here's my question. It looks neat and everything, but why on the description of the item, the first thing it says in all caps, "This machine disinfected," not like all caps?
That's a good question. That really starts to throw in a lot of questions here.
That's sus.
Yeah, boom, boom. Oh, that's a little sussy. Call them out. But still, pretty neat. This thing is, man, this thing is pretty pricey, though. I'm not going to lie. But still, I thank you so much for the support to the Turkish coffee. Maybe one day we'll have one of these Turkish coffee things. And with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for being an old guard, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running. So that way we can eventually get ourselves a Turkish coffee. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Marion Deemert, and sadly, no comment to address, but Marion, thank you very much for that support, and always supporting our channel, and always being a very loyal viewer, and I believe either Old Guard or...
Old Guard.
Is it Old Guard? I'm pretty sure Old Guard, yes. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running, and of course... Not only have you been a long-time viewer, you've also helped to support this channel as well, which has really meant a lot to us because you folks have helped this thing to keep ad-free for 395 days and help us to keep doing that. And also help us to keep living behind the scenes. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next we have a super chat from, this time it's from Vance Hicks, who puts in a $20 donation and says... Enforcer, World War II taught us that battleships were no longer the queen of battle, and this war is teaching us that main battle tanks are just mobile artillery pieces. Is air power done as well, except for drones?
I would say that air power is not done when applied correctly, because air power, when you do it incompetently, is going to get shot down very easily, especially if the enemy has great air defenses. That's one thing that the United States has always been the master of doing, is wiping out air defenses in all the wars it's been involved in, and that's why air losses for the West have always been incredibly low, while for other countries it's been incredibly high, because they don't really know how to take out the air defenses properly. You have to revolve your doctrines around the proper ideas for these kinds of equipments to be successful. The Russians have no doctrine, and that's why it appears that the main battle tank is obsolete, is because the Russians are using the wrong kind of doctrine when using their tanks. Instead of using them in support of the infantry, they try and push the tanks up on their own, and that's always a disaster. That's been a disaster since the beginning of time. Tanks have to be supported by infantry, and that kind of doctrine is just nonsensical. Not only nonsensical, it's asinine. So I would say that the main battle tank is not obsolete, because there was a time at the end of the Second World War that people actually thought the tank was obsolete. And that's when you saw such drastic changes to design philosophies, where you went from tanks like the Tiger II, and this is the best example of it, one of the heaviest armored tanks of the Second World War right here, and then right after the war, you go from this thing, where it had loads of armor, and then the Germans designed the Leopard 1, which had practically no armor, because the change of weapons showed, the change of anti-tank weapons and how effective they were, showed that tanks with massive amounts of armor and low maneuverability were no longer effective. And for a tank to be successful in a modern doctrine, its design and its theory behind its operation would have to change massively for it to be able to function. And that's why tanks started to emphasize, after the Second World War, instead of heavy armor and heavy firepower, they started to emphasize light armor, high maneuverability, and a very high amount of firepower. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can with a little bit of a historical instance there to show that tanks have gone through drastic doctrinal changes in the past. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to BC Skyman, who puts in a $20 donation once again. And thank you, BC, for that continued support. And he says, Israel cannot allow one nuclear weapon from Iran because they have vowed to destroy them and us. We must stand behind Israel and Ukraine.
And I thank you for the support. And can you reread that one again real quick, Matthew?
Yes. BC said, Israel cannot allow one nuclear weapon from Iran because they have vowed to destroy them and us, and we must stand behind Israel and Ukraine.
Now, I would say, I would speak on the Israel thing, but Israel is a very, weirdly enough, it's a very contentious political topic here in the United States. Either people hate Israel or they love Israel to one degree or the other. So, unfortunately, I can't really talk on them because while it's a diplomatic thing, for some reason it's also a very political thing in America. So I would say one thing though, if they're an enemy of Israel, if any country is an enemy of Israel, because Iran, well, I'm sorry, no, I'm saying this all wrong. If any country is an enemy of Iran, then they are our friends. The enemy of our enemy is our friend kind of thing. So if the Israelis are against the Iranians, then the Israelis are our allies in that situation. But I can't get into the rest of it because either people love Israel because of A, B, and C, or they hate Israel because of A, B, and C, and then it becomes a huge political thing, and it's like, oh Lord. And I already know that it's about to start in the live chat, but I do get what you're saying, BC Skyman, and I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Flash1, who puts in a $16 donation and says, when they count artillery destroyed, do they count a mortar as artillery?
I don't know if they do or don't. I feel like they probably would, considering it is an artillery piece. So maybe. That would be my best guess, is maybe. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $12 super chat from Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin. A great username, and thank you very much for that support. And they say, hopefully, I'll catch up with all you nice people later.
Where's he going? Where's he going?
I guess he got off for the night.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and hopefully you will be able to catch up with us later. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. I also see some people asking, well, why is Israel a political deal? I'll explain why real quick. I'll actually go into a little bit of detail here. So, one, people support Israel, and I'm going to go through both sides. We're going to make it unbiased. I'll just explain why I don't really want to make a definitive statement on it. One group in American politics supports Israel for certain reasons, mostly because there's some land in Israel that holds significance to Christians. That's a big reason why one side backs Israel. Another group in American politics does not support Israel because they say that Israel commits acts of genocide upon the Palestinians, and also they fund terrorist groups and other things like that. Not saying that any of it's true, and I'm not agreeing with one side or the other, but it has a very heavy political connotation in the United States. And if I say anything really in support or condemnation of Israel, I'll probably get thrown in a political camp. And so that's why I'm trying to avoid any real comment on Israel, because the only thing we try and do on this channel is say we support Ukraine, and that's about it. And if anything can have a political connotation attached to it, and people can try and connect me to one political ideology or the other, much like another channel has openly done, is try to align themselves with a certain political ideology in the United States, I feel like that really defeats our goal of just trying to keep unanimous support for Ukraine going, because then we start dividing the camp up into people who are with us and people who are against us, and and then that becomes a whole thing. So that's why I really don't want to try and say anything definitive in support or condemnation of Israel, but if they are on our side against Iran, then they are an ally. So with that, I hope that addresses why I'm not going into that too well, because it seems like some people are like, what the hell are you talking about? But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another super chat from Psyops. He puts in a 10 this time and says, nothing can keep the stream down. except for the restraining order between Mr. Corgi and Matt. Justice for Mr. Corgi.
And
if he got a restraining order between me and him, that poor fella wouldn't be eating very long. But anyway, what say you, Enforcer?
He a little miso word. I love miso word. And there was no.
And also, let me clarify real quick. I wouldn't starve him. I just simply couldn't feed him. That kind of came out a little weird.
You would starve Mr. Corgi to death. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And Mr. Wargi, he is a sweet little baby. I'm gonna have to get a picture of him and put him up on the community post sometime around, because Mr. Corgi is precious. I love that dog. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, real quick, I'll have to say this because I see a lot of people still talking about the Israel thing. Yes, Israel is our ally, and that's for political circumstances. Well, not really political circumstances, more like diplomatic circumstances revolving around the Middle East. I'm not saying they're not our ally. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't get thrown into a political camp. Because, and I'll say this real quick. The person who we make fun of that goes, call him out. Actually, about a week or two ago, if it was, Matthew, he went, like, all out on politics. Like, he just went and aired out his whole political ideology, and he started bashing people who supported Ukraine that weren't in his ideological camp, saying that they were idiots and things like that. And we try not do that here. And I know that if we...
Although it wouldn't be political to say that Israel's a sovereign country and we support, the borders of sovereign countries.
Well, I mean, funnily enough, like, what's weird is that, no, it doesn't really sound like that's weird to say. But then there's people here in the United States that are so militant about Israel shouldn't have, it shouldn't exist, it should all be Palestine, that then that becomes a political issue. And it really, honestly, is kind of annoying, because regardless of how the history unfolded with Israel, Israel did end up getting control of pretty much all of its land, as it is today. So I don't really understand why in America it is a political issue, but I'm trying to avoid getting into that political issue, although in my opinion, it doesn't really make much sense. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Alan Kenny, as well as a $10 super chat from Fernando Silva. Sadly, no comments to address on either one of them, but Alan and Fernando, thank you very much for your support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank both of y'all so much for the support. While y'all didn't leave in any comments, of course, the support helps us to keep this thing running. And I got to thank y'all so much for making this thing possible for us, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops again. He puts in another 10 and says, so that new thermal equipment just confirmed my suspicions that Ukrainians are being supported by predators, the alien predators. I knew those balloons were from space. And he says, Texas stinks.
And I thank you so much for the support. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta tell you, the alien predators were actually not that bad, really. I mean, they were kind of neat when you think about it, but still they were pretty ugly. But I still thank you so much for the support. And yeah, they got a lot of those thermals, man. They got loads of them. And so thank you so much once again, Silas, for the support. Texas does not stink. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, real quick, Jet Fusion asked, wasn't it Churchill's idea? And I think that was in reference to the whole thing with Israel. And I'll explain real quick where the whole thing with Israel comes from, because some of y'all may be like me and say, that doesn't really make sense why the whole thing's an argument today, because clearly it's A or clearly it's B. The whole reason why the argument around Israel exists today is because back in the day, when Palestine was a British, not a British protectorate, it was a British mandate. The British actually told the Arabians that they would actually get the area of Israel, which was called Palestine at the time, the Palestine Mandate, and they would get it once the mandate ended. However,
at the end of the Second World War, in light of what happened to the Jews in the Holocaust, it was decided that instead of giving the Palestine mandate to the Arabians, they would give the Palestine mandate to the Jews. And so then they would go and they would create the nation state of Israel. And that's kind of where the entire debate comes from today, is from that decision, because the British originally promised it to the Arabians, and then they went and reversed that, and then they gave it to the Jews. I'm not saying whether it was a good decision or not. I'm just explaining the history behind it and why that's a political argument to this day. And that's why, and that's also why there's such a huge war going on there, and there's also a lot of religious involvement as well from pretty much everyone involved, the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims, because it's the holy land of each one of them. So they all want to have control over the holy land of their religion, and that also creates a massive amount of conflict and fighting going on there. So that's kind of like trying to summarize it in a nutshell why there is that conflict. Because for some reason it's not dying in the live chat. I keep on seeing it brought up, and I'm trying to just explain what's going on there so that way y'all can see why I'm not really going into it, because you can see, like, how I explained it. Hopefully it shows why there's a very staunch divide, and probably why it's a very contentious topic, whether you support them or not. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $50 super chat from Joe Little. And thank you very much, Joe, for the support. He says, Sam Elliott approves of the 1911 A1 to the Ukrainian army.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, Joe Little. And the 1911 A1 is really cool. I actually have one. It's the Thesis. Oh, wait, it's this one right here, actually. It's the Thesis 1911. Sure, we actually took that thing shooting at some point. Actually, no, sorry, it's not this Thesis. Our Thesis actually has like the proper hammer on the back of it instead of this rounded one here. But this is the 1911 is a good gun. I've shot 1911s before. The Thesis 1911 does not jam. I'll give it that. It's a very reliable gun in terms of its cycling, never jams. But it's not that accurate, because I have a 45 Colt revolver and I have that 1911. I've shot them both, and I've got to be honest with you, the spread on a 1911 from Thesis at about 20 to 30 yards is about as wide as the person is. It's wider than the person is. You have about a 50-50 chance of hitting them at around 20 to 30 yards. With a Colt 45 revolver, and there's a lot at play there that makes the accuracy more reliable on a Colt 45 revolver. For example, the trigger pull is a lot smoother, but it's more accurate. And honestly, I don't want to sound like a total geed here, but I would definitely say that if I had to pick a pistol to use, it would actually be a Colt 45 single-action revolver, because while it doesn't really stack up in terms of ammunition capacity or anything like that, I really do like the way that pistol feels and how it shoots and how accurate it is at pretty good ranges. I like it, but the 1911 by no means is a bad pistol whatsoever. I love the 1911 as well. If I didn't have a Thesis, I would love it a lot more. It's a great gun, and I don't really see a lot wrong with it. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, Joe. And since you said Sam Elliott approves, have you ever wanted yourself a man's gun that could punch a hole the size of a fist through someone's chest? Well, then you ought to get yourself the all-new 1911. Entering into service 100 years ago, it's not exactly new, but the look on someone's face when they get shot by one of these things will be brand new. Make sure to get the all-new 1911 today. Guts, intestines, Colt. So with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
All right, so up next, we have and also, I do see some folks over there in the live chat saying that it's getting political, and I hate to say it, because we obviously have our own beliefs, but sadly we have to limit that in the live chat, or otherwise the two different sides will start going bonkers and fighting each other horribly. It's happened before, so please no politics or anything like that in the chat. So we can avoid a World War III situation over there. But anyways,
the reason why I was trying to explain that whole situation a little bit earlier was to explain why we couldn't really go into it, and it looks like in the process of trying to explain why we really couldn't go into it, it started in the live chat. So I have to ask for no politics. Now if any of y'all are wondering why that was a political issue, now if you're in the live chat, you were seeing why it is a political issue. So we would please ask if everyone would refrain from politics. We have a rule where we don't cover American politics on this channel, and that is, unfortunately, an American political subject. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Psyops once again. He says, so it's confirmed that Belashenko. No, man, I can't read that. Wait a minute. He says, show me a Ukrainian tractor or the super chats are going to get wild. Muha. Oh, God.
Well, I thank you for the support. Sadly, we don't have any tractors currently, but if we ever find a tractor, we'll make sure to show it to you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Landlubber, who puts in a $10 donation and says, happy weekend, everyone.
And happy weekend to you. It is Saturday. It's a very nice day. And Sunday is tomorrow. It's the Sunday fundraiser. And so, with that, thank you so much for the support. It's a great weekend, and tomorrow will probably make it an even better weekend. And with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation again. And thank you, Psyops, for that crazy amount of support once again tonight. Or that was either from tonight or yesterday. I can't really remember. But Psyops says, this super chat is from Amerifatti. He would like to request the donkey braise noise from Enforcer Matt. What? The lag cut off a yeehaw, and it was funny. Please, Matt, do it for the meme. Now, I'm not sure what a donkey braise noise is, but I can do this, though.
And so
thank
with
you
that,
for the support, Psyops.
so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Craig Platel, who puts in a $10 donation and says, stealth does not mean invisible, nor do you need to have the best stealth abilities all the time. Iskander does have some stealth properties, and it maneuvers, making it even harder to intercept.
Now, stealth is stealth. I thank you for the support. I'm going to have to disagree on that one a little bit. So it's stealth is stealth. You can't see something that's stealth. What you're talking about is low visibility. That's what you're describing, because an Su-57 is not stealth. It has a radar signature. It's low visibility because its radar signature is reduced, but it's not down to nothing, where it's almost minuscule in size. So I've got to thank you so much for the support, but you know, if it's not stealth all the way where you cannot see the thing, it's low visibility. It's still picked up on radar, and it isn't really stealth. But with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from James Moon, who said, let's see here, the box is blank. Let's see here. I think this one was actually blank. James Moon put in a $10 super chat, but without a comment on that one. And James, thank you very much for that support and helping us to keep the lights on. I know y'all love to hear that phrase, but thank you very much. Seriously, though, we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have another super chat from Psyops, who puts in a 10 and says, we need James Cameron or Picard to find out just how far Russia has sunk. Please show, let's see. What does this part mean? Let me send this over to the Enforcer.
Time for it to go up for review. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. You know, we're going to have to include a processing fee. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. Please show natural dam in Arkansas. Little love for the something tonight. Now, I don't know what that one is. I don't know what that means. Unfortunately, we'll have to stray away from that one. But let's go check out natural dam in Arkansas. There it is. It's natural dam
real.
In Arkansas. Now, you know, I wonder why it's called Arkansas, because, you know, there's Kansas up here, you know, right here, Kansas. And then you put in an AR, you put an Armalite in front of Kansas, and then you get Arkansas. That does not make any sense.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, when in the world has an Armalite ever changed the pronunciation of anything? Never.
I guess.
I mean, I suppose. But let's take a look at this thing. Natural dam. Here's a panoramic of it.
Oh wow, that's crazy. It's literally just like a rock shelf. Wow, that's wild.
I think the beavers did those.
Dude, this must have been aliens, man. I swear it was aliens.
But you see these patterns? These aren't natural.
These are not natural, man. Aliens did everything, man. You know it. We're lizard people, after all. We would know for sure. But that is really cool. I guess it's just a natural forming dam. And Matthew, you know what to say.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
But really cool.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Thank you. You did it better than me, I would say.
Walk with your boys.
Walk with your boys. We make it look easy. But let's see.
Trapaholics.
Let's look at it right here, because I wonder if this is the bridge. No, that's not the bridge, but that is a very dry river, man. That is a massively dry river. Where in the world's the dam? Damn it! Let's see. I can't find it, weirdly enough. Maybe that's it? No? Oh, here we go. It's right up here. Is there any information about this dam? Right here? Nope. It just says scenic spot. That's it. There's a 1-star review. We gotta find it. Sort lowest ratings. Don't go here. Funny smells, litter everywhere, too many people. Best to go to a water park.
What? A water park's gonna have more people at it than the natural
Yeah,
dam?
I know. That's... What the hell? Let's see here. Not as good as it could have been. The waterfalls are all dried up. They need a lot of rain to bring it back to former glory. Does this guy not understand there's like rainy seasons and the water isn't always consistent? I mean, like, they don't just turn on a tap on this thing. Some
people seriously go out to the forest and they're like, this customer service sucks out here.
Yeah, it's
like,
terrible.
It's nature.
It's terrible. There was no concession stands. Really stupid. I go to Six Flags. Like, it's like, you're stupid. Like if you go to this thing and expect something out of it rather than just a natural sight, that like, I don't know how to say it politely. There's got to be some brain cells missing there, because this is literally just like a rock shelf on a creek. But with that, thank you for the support.
They can make these reviews into like a series of books. Karen goes into the forest.
Karen goes to Uniontown. There were no labor unions here. Really stupid. I got myself an underpaid job. Not happy. You know, something like that. Oh man, but wait a minute. This is the real dam right here. I went to the real dam, natural dam. No real water. No fun. Could have gone to Disney World. Sucks. 1 star. And then they go to Disney World and they put a 1 star there too. People were so rude. You know, they said we could make you a day. They tried. They failed. Not happy. Went to Combs. There's something like that. Anyways, thank you for the support, Psyops. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have another one from Psyops, another $10 donation. Thank you very much, Psyops. He says, Iran's nickname is the Fortress Country because it has that for a reason. Its terrain makes it nearly impossible to assault and occupy. The last successful assault was by Alexander the Great, 100-1 for Alex.
And I thank you for the support. But I would kind of have to disagree with you there. Some of y'all may not know, we actually kind of intervened in Iran in 1943 in the middle of the Second World War and just rolled right in. Many people don't know that, but we did. Allied intervention, hence the Allied intervention in Persia. The Anglo-Soviet invasion of Iran, or the Anglo-Soviet invasion of Persia, was a joint invasion of the neutral imperial state of Iran by the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union in August of 1941. And it worked. We actually installed a government that was suitable to Allied interests during the Second World War due to that. So, kind of crazy. You can actually see Soviet soldiers on horseback and British soldiers in a little light tank here, which kind of shows you how backwards the Soviets were at the time. But, yeah.
The Soviets aren't far away from that right now.
Yeah, they really aren't. The British are driving around. The British are literally driving around, though, in like a modern-day Polaris with tracks right here, though. That thing is not, like, that advanced. But for the 1940s, like the early 1940s, it wasn't that bad, but still a little weird. Anyway.
You know, I just realized I called the Russians the Soviets. They're basically so close to being back to what they used to be. They basically are the Soviets again.
I mean, that is pretty true.
And of course, I thank you so much for the support. The Iranians wouldn't be that hard to invade because if the Soviets and the British could do it in 1941 with some success, I feel like the United States, with all of its might, could probably do it fairly easily in the modern day. I mean, like, hell, we blasted the Iraqis in the Gulf War and the invasion of Iraq in 2003. If we could do that, we could do it to Iran. So with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Mace, who says, do you think any major Ukrainian offensive will be postponed until after the Rasputitsa season? Is it even logical or practical to move huge amounts of armor before late May?
It's not practical to move it until mid-April. Mid-April seems to be the date that the Rasputitsa will end, going off of last year's standards, but of course, weather isn't always consistent. I would say that it's not really practical to launch an offensive right now, especially with the weather conditions. Armored offensives just cannot work in muddy ground. Kind of like how back in the Napoleonic era, or any era for that matter, muddy ground conditions would stymie a battle, and you never want terrible ground conditions because there's just really no way to conduct a successful offensive. You have to wait for the ground to dry. So I would say that right now isn't an opportune time. I would say to wait maybe another week or 2 weeks and then launch the offensive then. So with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. I got to read this one off. There was a bot in here. I learned your ways. Said, yeah, you guys are kind of cool, but overall you're morons. so I said in response to this bot, I said, oh, come on, go down, mouse. I said, no. I said, well, overall you're banned, so I guess we're even.
Oh man, Matthew threw down the axe on this guy's head. Poor man. Oh man. And now Matthew's lifting his head up onto the crowd so that way they can take a good look at what the guillotine did. But goodness, I mean that we've been getting that kind of stuff ever since the start. We're morons this, we're morons that. I remember for almost an entire year at this point, we were being told, hey, why don't you listen to so-and-so guy because, he's got all of this experience and you should bring him on the show because he would really add to y'all's knowledge. And then they find out he's a, according at least allegedly, he has about as much knowledge as we would, I love how people come in and say that though, because I understand if people do disagree with us and we get things wrong and people correct us on that, because that's fine. We do get things wrong and I will admit that. And whenever anyone says we got something wrong, they explain how and how it should be, we listen to it. And if we are wrong, we correct it. But when people come in and say something like that, it's like, what are we really supposed to get from that? It's like, oh, like I don't even know what people think they do, because there's a lot of people that do that in real life too, especially in the, suffice it to say, the political sphere on both sides. Like someone would go up to the opposite side and try and throw in a zinger. It's like, you didn't really accomplish anything, like that didn't really accomplish anything. So I don't even know what the hell the point of that kind of stuff is, but it's hilarious to ban them. So with that, Lauren said, we are entertained, and Robbie Phillips said, I'm entertained. I'm glad to hear y'all are entertained. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
I like to get even with the bots sometimes. Sometimes I just like, just take it away. But then sometimes you're like, I got to get even with that one.
Yeah.
but anyways.
I love how they sit there, the bots nowadays, trying to get clever, and they'll say something like, I love you, but I hate you. It's like, what, do you think that's like not see-through? Like, what the hell? Like, that's like an attempt at like saying there, Matthew, saying like, it's a great show and all, but y'all honestly suck and y'all ought to get off the air. It's like, obviously that's not a positive comment. I don't even know why the hell they word them like that.
That person's been acting strange all night. I think they've been here for, a month, but tonight they're acting rather strange, I gotta say. Rather strange. Yeah. I think their true colors came out.
Yeah, and eventually, someone, it's weird because sometimes people can be here for like 6 months, like, maybe the longest 6 months, and then for some reason they just snap. And it's like, like, especially over the course of 6 months, you would think that someone would realize if you get rude with them, if you get rude with us for no reason, you'll just get banned, because we don't get rude to viewers for no reason. We don't expect anyone to get rude with us for no reason. You are here. It's like you are here watching our show. This isn't Walmart. There's no like corporate policy where you can cuss us out and you stay. It's like, if you're rude, you go. If you heckle, you're gone. It's like,
I don't know why in the world some people just think, oh, tonight I'm just going to start cussing them out. You know, it's like, what? It's just like, what in the world crosses people's minds to think that's like normal or something? I don't know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is from Rob Eisman, who puts in a $20 donation and says, I'm a submarine guy. Leaving subs out, comparing China's Navy to the U.S. Navy is a tad foolish. IMHO. First, what do we think when we see Made in China stamp? Second, who has the second largest air force in the world? USN perspective. And I have to say, thank you very much, Rob, for the support. But comparing the two, I think there is a fair comparison to be made there. I know we automatically have the assumption that everything made in China is subpar, and I would have to agree with that on the whole. But that doesn't mean we should simply rule them out and dismiss the threat, because I think there still is a threat there. And if we start dismissing the threat, then we get complacent. And then if a war did break out between us and China, we find out in the midst of a battle that we're not truly prepared. But fair point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that is actually a good point. Excluding the submarine forces from the Navy is a little odd, considering the submarines are a massive part of naval doctrine. I'm doing that, though, in an attempt to simplify things, because adding submarines into the picture, at least trying to explain stuff about, you know, a naval warfare, it really complicates it a lot, because there's a lot involved in submarine warfare, and I'm sure as a submariner you would understand that submarine adds a lot of like 4-dimensional depth, almost literally, to naval warfare, and that's very hard to try and wrap one's head around, especially when trying to assess things. And especially since most people, for some reason, exclude the submarines and only talk about the surface fleet, the point of talking about the surface fleet alone is to try and directly combat that argument about the surface fleet, not the submarine fleet. But still, that is a great point, and I would still say, in my opinion, I don't really think the Chinese Navy could stand up to the U.S. Navy, just for the fact we would have overwhelming air power and air superiority anywhere in the ocean at that point. Anywhere in the seas around the world at that point, we would have air superiority over the Chinese Navy. And not only that, U.S. aircraft carriers do have purpose-built air squads on them to counter submarines, and so anti-submarine warfare would be massively superior from the U.S. side than on the Chinese side. The Chinese could really only do that around their coasts. The United States could do that wherever an aircraft carrier task force is present. So there would be a lot more submarine interdiction going on there from the U.S. side than there would be the Chinese side. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for providing your insight. Insight. That's a new kind of rifle sight. You can buy it at theenforcerstore.com. It's an insight, but still, thank you for your insight. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Fernando Silva for putting in a $10 donation. I can't remember if that was tonight or last night, but thank you very much, Fernando, for the support, and we appreciate it very much. And the next one goes to JD Mako23, who puts in a $10 donation and says, please check out Starsky's skit from today, Yamelian from Skov.
I will check it out. I actually had to get Starsky's interview for something. He hasn't responded in a while, actually. But you know, maybe one day he will. Because I have to write a paper. So let's see here. How long is it? 2 minutes and 13 seconds. So we'll take a look at it. Hopefully we don't get copyright striked by Starsky. So here's the clip.
Hello my friends, Operator Starsky here, and today I would like you to meet my good Russian friend Yemelyan from Pskov. This is Yemelyan, my good Russian friend. Unfortunately, he cannot talk because he's good Russian, and I found Yemelyan exactly 1 year ago lying down next to a stolen printer that was snatched from a local school here in Hostomel, and I decided to take him with me because he told me that he's absolutely crazy about Ukraine. He literally lost his head. So I gave him a shower, okay, because he stank like feces. And since that time, he absolutely loves staying here in Hostomel, even though his family and his soul are still there in Russia, in Pskov, as well as his body parts. But he will stay here, and I will be always taking him with me wherever I go, because he's a Vatnik and he's a good representative of Russian world. And you know, the biggest difference between Russian and Ukrainian soldiers is that Russian soldiers tend to steal laundry machines, housewares, printers, graphic cards, and they call them military trophies. And the only type of military trophies us, Ukrainian soldiers, can have is basically Russian soldiers or their belongings. So I decided to present Yemelyan with a new head to make him smart, okay? And if you have any idea on what kind of head he can have, please let me know in the commentaries, and please stay updated on Yemelyan and his travels around Ukraine. My name is Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.
Not bad, not bad. Not that bad of a skit. I mean, I guess that really was a mind-opening experience for that Russian, wouldn't you say, Matthew?
It was. That Russian really found out.
Certainly, certainly. And that Russian ended up not just stealing more than printers, if you know what I mean. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Epic Train Canada, who puts in a $7 donation and says, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And that would have worked a lot better if I hadn't said this one says, but I do get the point, and good joke. You know the phrases by heart. Thank you very much for the support, Epic Trains Canada. And with that being said, like you said, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we're on to the next one, which is from Midas Brian 23, who puts in a 5 and says, Slav Ukraine, and God bless the LSA.
And Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 5 and says, you called me old guard yesterday, and I'm honored, but I'm only sold at. You can add me to the LSA Medical Corps if you like. Health to you and LSA.
Nah, not to me, you're not a soldat to me. You're an old guard, man. You're an old guard, pal. And so with that, thank you for the support. You're an old guard. You're an old guard now. You've been promoted. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. One day we will finally get around to designing a uniform, at least on print, for the old guard. I want the different units to have different uniforms. Kind of like how the best way to explain it is how the British Empire would preserve, in a way, the culture of the part of the empire these soldiers were coming from. For example, Indian soldiers would have Indian traditional clothes integrated into their uniforms, kind of like how Scottish soldiers also had kilts as a part of their dress uniforms until about the 1940s, and still have it as, well, actually a part of their combat uniforms until the 1940s, still a part of their dress uniforms. I think that would be really neat to do for different parts of the world, like coming up with different uniforms that have, I guess you could say the, I guess you could say cultural implements of the part of the world that area of the Lee Spring Army's from, but having kind of like a generalized, standardized-ish look. I think that would be really neat. And also, I'm thinking about forming a new unit in name that would be differentiated from all the other units and even the old guard, which would be the lifeguard. And a lot of y'all, well, you know, Matthew's probably laughing over there because he's thinking about a lifeguard from a swimming pool, because that's probably what most people think of as a lifeguard from a swimming pool. But in most countries in the world, there was a lifeguard, which was actually the guard of the life of whoever was in charge. And so I guess that would kind of be the lifeguard to the enforcer and enforcer Matt. I think that would be pretty cool, and come up with a whole new uniform thing for that, and a whole new symbolism, symbolism stuff for that as well. But with that, Matthew just staggered me right there because he just said we had 20 super chats left.
I knew why you're stumbling around too. You read 20 super chats and went, oh, wow.
Yeah, so with that, I think it's time, and thank you so much once again for the support as well before we move on to the next one. I think it's time, Matthew, for a lightning round.
Oh, this early?
Okay, well, we're on to the next one. We won't do a lightning round yet. The way you said that, I don't think we could do one yet. So with that, we're on to the next one.
So the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, makes a stream, titles it Russia is leaving Crimea, doesn't elaborate, leaves, Oh, well, jokes aside, I grew up with bad internet. It's never fun to deal with.
Well, I thank you for the support. Bad internet is certainly not anything good to deal with, and hopefully one day we'll get some good internet in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, poll suggestion, will a T-55 turret toss one higher than the T-72, or the same as a T-72, or lower than a T-72? And Enforcer, we'll let you answer that question since it's getting late and there's not really any time left to run the poll.
And it'll actually be a little lower because there's less ammunition, and also the ammunition is of a smaller caliber in a T-55. So with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And of course we will. And thank you very much, CK Bold, for the support. Thank you very much. And the live chat question goes to, let's see here, Stuart Young, who says, is the Iskander M solid or liquid fueled? If liquid, perhaps the carrier vehicles are so large in order to carry missile fuel as well.
I believe that the T'Pol is I believe that they're both solid, but I'm not really sure. And I would pull it up, but we're running very short for time tonight. But that may be the reason why. That's probably a very good explanation as to why it may be a very large truck. And so with that, thank you for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to not for one, but for all Ukraine, who puts in a 5 and says, Slava Ukraine, we American Eagle stand with Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And thank you for the support, and long live the LSA. And it's good to hear that you stand with Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, shout out to Junebug72 for putting in a $5 donation, as well as General Marty SAS for putting in a 2. Chase Matty also put in a 2, along with Dubber Bob and Mark Andre Burnett, and Coffee and Gold put in a 1. And thank you all very much for your support. Sadly, no comments to address, but we do appreciate it nonetheless. And thank you for helping to keep LSA running while I'm can't speak.
God bless. We're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to John G. Puts in a $5 donation and says, "Do you ever get sensory overload? I hope you got to relax a bit yesterday. You are on top of the game reporting these news. Glory to the heroes."
And thank you so much for the support. And I do get sensory overload. This is actually going to be really shocking to a lot of y'all. I actually get sensory overload when things like last night happen where we cancel a show, because I have a very strict schedule. And while I'm exhausted, I'll be honest with you, I'm exhausted all the time at this point. It feels like I'm never awake. Even when I get off days, I still feel just worn out. At the same time, though, when you run 6 streams a week and you're used to that, when a night's canceled and it just doesn't work, that actually is more exhausting than running a whole 3.5-hour stream for some reason. I don't really know how to explain that. So yes, last night I actually had a little bit of sensory overload, and I'm trying to recover by running today's stream. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. We're on to the next one.
All right, and I'm going to speed up the talking a little bit if I can handle it. The next one goes to Midget Hobbit, who puts in a 5 and says, "Sorry, but I'm not a fan of you buying a corgi when there are so many dogs in need at shelters. You could have at least adopted a dog from Ukraine. Adopt, don't shop."
And I thank you so much for the support, but we got our dogs nearly 5 years ago, and so that means that we really couldn't have gotten a dog from Ukraine because there were really no dogs from Ukraine to get. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope you addressed that fairly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Madison Music Teacher, who says, "I was also held at Redstone in college. I drove onto the Arsenal to visit the fencing team. There, in my full white uniform and helmet, was super embarrassing." And I have to say, Madison Music Teacher, that they really need to mark those turns a little bit more clearly, because we really didn't know we were turning down that way, and we found out the hard way. But thank you very much for the support, and Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to certainly agree. The entrances are very, well, not marked well at all. It's really annoying. And also, on top of that, why in the hell do they always sit there and have to hold you for an entire hour? It's really stupid. And on top of that, they could just turn you around and send you back on your way, but instead, they got to hold you there like you're some kind of terrorist or something. And so with that, thank you so much once again for thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to James Moon, who puts in a 5 and says, "Go Enforcer." And I know he left out Enforcer Matt, but it's okay, James. Thank you very much for the support.
And I think so. I can't even do it, man. I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. That auctioneer thing was a once in a lifetime thing. Because usually my brain is so dead at this point of the night, it hardly can really function at that speed. But I got to thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and telling us to keep it running. And with that,
we are on to the next one. No, it's not Cocaine Enforcer. Cocaine Bear came out of theaters. Make sure to go check it out because the box office was big. But really, I'm not
And
really.
Fed said he said, oh, the Blitz speech.
Blitz speech, yeah. With that, we are on to the next one, yeah.
All right, and the next one goes to Ukraine F. Putin, who puts in a 5 and says, if you started watching the stream on day 38, you would be a legend, old guard or Leaf Spring member, ? Doing great work, and love Ukraine.
We actually moved up the old guard membership to day 30, because day 4 was getting a little weird at that point, considering how long the war's been going. So up to day 30, you're an old guard. If you're after day 30, you're not an old guard. So with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, yeah. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And James Moon put in a 5. He said, faster, please.
And thank you for the support, James Moon. Sadly, I cannot go faster. My brain can't mentally handle it tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $4 super chat from Chris Chaturis. Fight that good fight. He says, the funky tees are coolest t-shirt on the street.
And they are. They're not that bad. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to TTCMZX, who puts in a $2 donation and says, can I change my super chat to checking out the painting I sent on Twitter? And yes, Enforcer, if you punch in the Twitter and look at our notifications tab, you will see that painting.
Peter, the painting's here. Let's see. Notifications. Which one? This one?
There it is. I like the username is Sauce and Meat.
What type of dish would you like at the tavern, sir? I would like that sauce and meat, sir. But yes, I quite like this. This is pretty neat. Is it glow in the dark? It looks glow in the dark.
It does, actually.
That's pretty neat. And so with that, thank you so much for the support, me boy. Hopefully it's addressed that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mank, two-wheeler, who says, actually puts in 3 of them, and says, thanks for the great content, young, mature legends. And also, if you had to guess, when will the war end?
Ooh, we don't crystal ball it, but I could see it go until the end of this year. And also, I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel. You call us mature, but my accent says otherwise. But still, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the praise as well. We appreciate it greatly, and I would say most likely sometime around the end of this year. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 1 and says, maybe put the new LSA PSYOPs bombs as outro.
Maybe that would be pretty cool. And so with that, thank you for the support. Pretty neat suggestion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 1 from Margaret Hemsley once again, who says, Enforcer, what year is it?
How am I supposed to answer that? It's 2023. Wait, hang on. Let me do it like they always do in the movie. For some reason in the movies, whenever you go back in time past like the 1900s, you go, what year is it? And they always go, it's the year of our Lord. You know, and it's like, nobody said that. It's like everyone said it's 1753. Like they didn't sit there and go through the whole spiel. Like you could do that now. It's Anna Domini, it's 2023. No one would say that. They say it's 2023. No one even wrote like that back then. They would just go, it's the year 1753. They never went, it's the year of our Lord. Okay, I'm going on a rant. We don't really have time for that. But anyways, thank you for the support. It's 2023, and with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our last super chat goes to Mank Two-Wheeler once again, who puts in a $1 donation and says, if con is the opposite of progress, opposite.
Interesting. Very interesting conundrum indeed. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does kind of address it somewhat well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, good night to you, Mank Two-Wheeler. I saw you getting off for the night. And also, I attacked a bot while I was seeing you say good night. But anyways, with that, we have one more super chat. This one goes to Mace once again, who puts in a 10 and says, could you talk fast again? Just about something. LOL. It's hilarious.
And I thank you so much for the support, Mace. And of course I can talk fast, but it really takes a lot of focus and time and effort to try and do this thing. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again.
All right, and with that being said, we're into our live chat questions. And first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream, Mark Hodges, CFA, JP's RC's, Cliff Simonson, and Dark Warrior 137. They said the Morse code says Russian commanders and Forrest Gump have something in common. They're always running.
Ding, 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 ding. Chennai, I'm always running. And y'all got it right. The Morse code message does in fact say that. They are always running, much like Forrest. One day they're going to go, I'm tired, and they're going to surrender. And hopefully that'll be soon. And so with that, thank you all for deciphering the Morse code message. And with that, we are on to the next one. But due to time constraints tonight, we'll only be able to answer 3 live chats. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, Margaret Hemsley put in another one and said, what like year is it? Like the likes? Like, it's 2300.
It's the year of our Lord 2359. So there's no historical event that's even happened yet, because it's in the future. But still, I hope that answers the question fairly well. Now it's up to 2360. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the first live chat we have here goes to Pizza the Hut, who says, check the LSA word on Urban Dictionary.
I'm going to have to pull that up off screen.
Yeah. The LSA word for, if LSA is on Urban Dictionary, I'm about to flip.
There's a million of them. The biggest one, though, seems to be about let's spread anime. And, you know, we're not into anime. The other one is leave alone. The other one is lovers. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know what that one is. We're not there. We're not there. We don't exist on the Urban Dictionary, but I did take a look at a Pizza Man, and I'm very disappointed. We need to be on the Urban Dictionary. And so with that, I'm sure someone's I'm sure one of our haters is going to go on there and go, the Lee Spring Army is a bunch of idiots, or something like that. But with that,
wait a minute, I see us. We're on there. It's the second option. It's LSA. It says acronym for Lee Spring Army, the subscriber community of the Enforcer YouTube channel owned by Enforcer and Matt. No, they explained the whole thing. It was posted in July 28 of 2022.
Hang on. Let me go. Well, when I type it in on, I'm scared to get on Urban Dictionary because I don't know if it puts viruses on my computer, so I'm trying to just look at it on Google. Did you get on Urban Dictionary?
Yeah, I'll just send it to you.
No, I'll just type it in. I'll see if you're right. I'll type in LSA, click INA.
There, the screenshot is in your Discord DMs.
Oh, look at that. Let's see. Wow, it really is on the Urban Dictionary. You're absolutely right. What are the comments below this thing, though? Let's see. It doesn't look like there's any comments on it, though.
It's got 10 likes.
It does have 10 likes, which is pretty cool. But whenever I click on it, it doesn't allow me to, look at the thing on its own. And then it says, get the LSA mug below it. That's cheap.
Does that link to something?
It sends you to the Urban Dictionary's merch store where they'll custom print a mug with LSA on it, cheap, and it's $33.
Hey, they're ripping us off.
Yeah, I feel like that's some kind of copyright infringement. Really, I kind of feel like that is. But
it actually could be.
Well, yeah, I mean, hell, man, maybe we need to fire up a cease and desist letter. Maybe our attorneys will finally be whirring up in jets or something. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from James Mood once again. He says, what do you think of the Navy ship that has the new laser weaponry?
I think it's incredibly cool. I think it's really neat, actually. I would say that's one of the cooler things out there at the moment. Gotta say, I kind of like it. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Santiago Flores. He says, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about Ukraine pilots checking out A-10s and a request for F-18 to Finland, and any comment?
No comment at the moment because we don't really have any information on that to be able to talk about it for certain. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And I believe we actually had another super chat come in, Matthew, that we haven't addressed.
Yes, no, we didn't.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Are you? Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Let me make sure. Okay, yeah, you're right. We did cover them all. And I think though, we got to do one more question because I didn't do the normal spiel. And so we're now moving on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person throwing the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Gregory Burke. who says, how much longer before the spring Ukrainian offensive against those heathen Russians?
Probably about mid-April, so it should be maybe like 2 weeks from now. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure running the news for everyone tonight. I hope you all enjoyed, and if y'all did, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe as well, because we greatly appreciate all of those things. And of course, we'll see you all tomorrow on the Sunday night fundraiser at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course, make sure to subscribe. I'm kind of losing where I'm supposed to be right now. I usually have like this typical thing ironed out, but for some reason, I'm lost tonight. So with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraini.
And Heroam Slava, Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.